with the second meeting in each month. I'd like to first publicly welcome the recently elected Councillor Barry Cunningham, he's already been sworn in, and he is in as no longer the alderman-elect, as the term is before you get sworn in. He is now, pardon me, not an alderman, a councillor-elect. So Councillor Cunningham, in good health and ready and willing to serve. And welcome, Councillor Cunningham. I know you're feeling a little sheepish about this, but welcome. Yes, you certainly may. Our congratulations and best wishes. So I ask Council to consider the recommendation that the regular meeting be suspended and the Committee of the Whole meeting be convened. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garon. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. I'll refer everyone present to the Committee of the Whole agenda. I'll ask Council to consider the adoption of the agenda. So it would be that the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting of December 9th, 2013 be adopted as circulated, but with the deletion of the Northwest Community College delegation on the agenda who have canceled their appearance. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion's adopted. Under petitions and delegations, the first presentation this evening is from Mr. Sean Stevenson, the Vice President of Trade Development and Public Affairs for the Prince Rupert Port Authority, and he's here with a Port Authority update. Mr. Stevenson, good evening. If you'd come forward, please make yourself comfortable there. If you're prone to getting a dry mouth when you're speaking, please have a glass of water. It happens to everybody. And when you're ready, please pull the mic towards you, and it'll be to your eye a grayish-green button. And once you put that on, it'll allow the people that are at home watching by television to hear you.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council, for an opportunity to come and give you an update on the Port of Prince Rupert. Appreciate you got a busy agenda, and I'll try to keep it brief. I want to highlight some of the profound growth we're seeing within the Port of Prince Rupert, and it's really a trade story, in particular exports that are leading the way in our growth. If you look over the past 5 years, our total traffic is the top line there. We've seen some fairly astounding growth in almost every line of business, whether it be coal through Ridley Terminals, ag products through Prince Rupert Grain, and as exciting, I think, is the growth we're seeing in exports through the container terminal. Our total traffic at Fairview Container Terminal has continued to grow since opening in 2007. And the bottom two lines on the graph represent the growth in imports, primarily consumer goods coming through Prince Rupert into destinations in central Canada and the U.S. Midwest, but also the tremendous growth in export volumes. We're seeing growth in forest products. In fact, today we're almost handling as much forest products through our container terminal as we were when Prince Rupert and Fairview Container Terminal was almost exclusively a forest product terminal. And I think that speaks to the tremendous opportunity that we're seeing in the Asia-Pacific region for BC industries and Western Canadian industries and their thirst for Canadian natural resources and inputs to production there. Also, what we're seeing in the growth of the port, both through growth in traffic through existing terminals and new terminals coming on, is diversification. When we saw the decline in traffic back in the late 90s and early 2000s, it really stemmed from declines in three primary industries we're serving: the coal sector, grain, and forest products. But now, as we've seen growth in traffic through the container terminal, the import of manufactured goods, consumer goods, auto parts, electronics, and so forth, plus the growth in exports of forest products and ag and containers, and also with the opening of the new wood pellet biofuel terminal in Prince Rupert, we're seeing profound diversification in our capacities here, which is really a big focus of the Port Authority as we look to grow and expand. It's also about diversification, responding to Canada's key trading sectors and ensuring we've got a diverse port complex here that can serve those industries. Equally as exciting as what we see before us with developments. And we've spent a lot of time over the past 5 years focusing on integrated development planning of port lands and the port complex. And that includes the growth and expansion of infrastructure to enable projects to continue to advance and be investigated on port lands. In addition, it's really focused on ensuring that projects can interface together should they move towards operations and avoid bottlenecks that are impacting the efficiency of ports across North America today. The infrastructure such as the Road Rail Utility Corridor project, CN siding on the South Kayan area, plans for logistics services are all about creating efficiency and maximizing the development opportunity at the port, while also mitigating some of the impacts of port activity on the community. And we're primarily focused, in particular, in the area around South Kayan and the Ridley Access Road, and trying to create more economic opportunity out of the port operations beyond just simply the terminaling of cargo. The Road Rail Utility Corridor is an extremely exciting project that we see advancing. Two individuals on the left are part of the workforce out there that are building the rail corridor. The project is on budget, on schedule, and is an exciting piece of infrastructure that effectively unlocks the development opportunity at the Ridley Industrial Site. At the same time, we're doing a lot of work to plan for growth. And that includes focusing on navigational safety and ensuring we're planning the harbor for increased vessel traffic, and ensuring we can do it in a safe, efficient, and environmentally sound manner. Included in this work has been doing work on marine risk analysis or navigational risk that looks at our traffic today, but also contemplates the growth in vessel traffic, the introduction of new types of vessels and cargoes, and understanding what kind of risk that represents as we go forward. And that's really informed a review of our own practices and procedures as a port authority to ensure we've got best-in-class oversight of that marine traffic, but also looking towards enhancement to navigational aids, looking at traffic segregation schemes to ensure that we can grow safely and efficiently going forward, and enjoy the benefits of a growing port, but mitigate the risks that may come about with increasing vessel traffic. One example recently was the Phillips Point NavAid, which was a partnership between the Port Authority and Canada Coast Guard, which serves to improve that navigational profile and ensuring that whatever type of vessel we see coming, whether it be LNG carriers or increased container traffic, that can happen safely and efficiently going forward. As this council is certainly aware, we've got a number of projects that are at various stages of investigation, and we're excited about that. We think we've got world-class proponents, and they're actively engaged in the community and in trying to raise awareness of the attributes of their projects and get important community feedback that's going to inform their planning for their projects. It's truly astounding, I think, as we move outside of Prince Rupert. I recently was on the Premier's trade mission to Asia. The profile Prince Rupert has, not just based upon the business we see today and the important trade gateway it represents, but what the rest of the world perceives of Prince Rupert for the future. And I think often we lose sight of the role Prince Rupert plays as such a strategic gateway for trade in Canada, because we're often overwhelmed with the sheer scale of the potential developments before us. And I think it's very interesting to get an external viewpoint, in particular in Asia, and the profile Prince Rupert has as a port going forward. We're also very mindful of the limited land base we have to work with as a port. You've seen this aerial image and graphic probably many times before, often focused on the development properties on the Ridley Industrial Site. But the blue area for us represents a tremendous opportunity to expand upon the economic opportunity in Prince Rupert that the port may represent, with growing container activities and project cargo opportunities. looking at unlocking the development potential of lands along the Ridley Access Road that are currently in the control of the province of British Columbia. We're actively engaged with the province of BC to explore how we can create opportunity with those lands. And we think they figure prominently not just in creating additional services, container logistics, project cargo staging and laydown, but also serve to be used to mitigate some of the impacts of the container terminal today, and primarily truck traffic through the downtown core. We want to see improved segregation of that activity so that the community can continue to enjoy the economic opportunities the port represents, but also ensure that some of the negative impacts of increased traffic don't serve to impact the community vitality and livability. So that's essentially a quick update on the port. We're also, I would say, extremely interested in improving and enhancing our engagement opportunities with the community, and have recently initiated a number of community forums, including the Community Information Forum that we're currently recruiting participants to, so we can build upon the instruments we have right now to communicate with the community, but also create opportunities for discussion and dialogue to ensure that we understand all of the issues in the community that inform development plans going forward.
So what sort of individuals are you looking for with regards to those forums?
We're looking for a cross-section of interests and backgrounds. It's really about ensuring that there can be an open and broad dialogue on port projects, the future of the port, to identify issues of concern, issues of opportunity, and ensure that we can address those on an ongoing basis through an open dialogue.
So perhaps people representing various sectors of the community?
Various sectors, various interests. It's really making sure that there's a, call it, comprehensive dialogue as it relates to the port, and we can have those discussions in a much more interactive way than often other communications instruments provide.
Thank you. I'll see if there's any questions from members of council, but I'll ask the first question myself, and that is, we're often concerned with safety here, and of course the private haul road, the truck bypass, is always of constant interest. And I'm wondering where that fits. I saw your last slide there, which showed the purple, the railway utility and road corridor, and the division of the lots there, and of course the blue areas along the Ridley Island Access Road, and along the harbor entrance, the other blue area would be where your most recently built rail line would be. I believe they're laying the tracks there perhaps this week. And then there's a private haul road that would run from the container port to Ridley Island to the container inspection facility. Have you got any idea when that would be projected?
Well, we're currently working on, we've been working on the planning and engineering of that road. We're also exploring alternatives to the road, which will create the same effect of moving the trucks out of the downtown core and feeding into the terminal. Because there may be an alternative worthy of consideration in using rail as a conduit. But either way, the same effect would be to move the trucks out of the downtown core and create greater efficiencies, quite frankly, because moving through the downtown corridor or downtown core, whether it's from the CBSA inspection facility or some of the container stuffing and reload operations, is not particularly effective.
No, that's
and
true.
So we're eager to see that advanced, and we're currently exploring solutions that include either a road or a potential rail shuttle.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
Thank you. First off, I just wanted to say, I did say this at a previous council meeting, but and I'm sure this is on behalf of council, but a thank you for the 2.1 million that the port gave us. That's certainly very welcome. So I wanted to say thank you about that. I did have a question. I was going to ask a question about the haul road, but you've answered that. And it has to do with I guess, waterfront access, which we had a continual discussion about. And so I was looking for a couple of things, and one was and if there was any update on the sort of Cow Bay development plan that you guys had presented to us. I can't remember exactly when, but it's been sort of on a continual basis. If there's been any update in terms of where we're at in that process.
Well, yeah, and just on your first point about the interim payment on the continued work we're doing to try to resolve the PILT issue. We recognize the length of time that's taking to resolve, and we're committed to resolve it further to some of the feedback we heard through the recent the hearings, and certainly that is intended to try to keep the city whole while we try to get to a conclusion on the issue. As far as waterfront access, we recognize the importance that the community places on waterfront access. I mean, we all live in the community. We know that it's so limited for a city that lives on the ocean. And we went through a fairly comprehensive visioning exercise with the community just over a year ago. That culminated in the Cow Bay Development Plan, but it wasn't limited just to the lands in and around Cow Bay. It really focused on the area from Quinitza and beyond. Those plans remain intact. We continue to work with the city on concluding the purchase of the lands. In addition, there's other projects being contemplated as well on the Central Waterfront. But again, they're going to take a resolution to, property ownership, and in this latter case, it's CN. So we're eager to conclude the transaction with the city that paves the way for us to move forward with the Cow Bay development vision that the community, quite frankly, owns, and also look to other projects in and around the Quinitza Station area that can continue to enhance the access for the community to the waterfront.
Thank you. So that I figured it was in the works, but I just update people on where it's at, because I know, and I mean, obviously as things grow, from the point where things started to happen more out at Ridley and everything, expansion, etc. Originally, when the port came to us, there was some talk of there perhaps at one point being a viewpoint at Ridley Island, and that kind of fell to the wayside for lots of different reasons. There was talk about something happening on Liliu Island. Obviously, that's kind of fallen to the wayside for various reasons. And I mean, we understand that. But I guess, we're still looking for that. So it's good to hear that we're working together on that. You mentioned CN, and I realize that what I'm going to ask is not something that is in the port's purview, but I know that I asked at a previous council meeting about having us contacting CN and talking to them. There was a report in the Northern View about Pinnacle Pellet and the proposed walkway that they had put in their diagrams and stuff, and that wouldn't be possible because of issues with CN. And I understand that is, kind of the point of view right now. What I'm wondering is this. I guess myself, and I don't know about the rest of council, I haven't given up on that idea yet. And what I'm wondering is if you could relay, and I understand that you wouldn't necessarily be able to answer this, but if you could relay to the port that I think it would be wonderful if they would be willing to, if we can get a meeting with CN, to meet with us as an interested stakeholder to talk about what could possibly be done down there, working together to mitigate any safety concerns, but then to also do exactly what we've been talking about, try to provide that waterfront access and still have the economic development that everybody wants. So just wanted to pass that message along.
Be happy to pass that on, and we are of the same mind that we think there are some things that can be done down there while still ensuring that the safety is preserved in the operations of that rail yard. And that's come out loud and clear in all of our consultation with the community and so forth. So I'll be happy to pass that on, but I can also say that we are actively engaged trying to find solutions that create the balance between the economic opportunity the waterfront represents and community livability. So,
thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
On your access to the waterfront, Pinnacle says they're working with you now at finding alternative routes. Why isn't any of the community groups involved in that? It seems like you want to give access to the public, but you don't want to talk to the public about it. We've got lots of land down there, Rustbrook Trail. You could be working with Pinnacle on improving that. That's a start. But it just seems like this last little article, Pinnacle's working with the port. And I never heard anything about community involvement in it. I would like to see the port sit down with some of the community groups that have tried to enhance access to the waterfront and work out some plan, because there's been plans to do Rustbrook for quite a while. It's still blocked at both ends and people are still using it. And, this is one opportunity where the port could step up to the plate rather than window dressing all the time. I just see that, in this article, Pinnacle is now working with the Port Authority to develop a strategy. But they're not asking the city for any input in that strategy or the citizens of this community who really want that access.
Perhaps I could give some background on the Rushbrook area. The Rotary Clubs of Prince Rupert at one time looked at it, and it came in that the cost would be about $1.2 million. And they would have to end up actually moving the walkways off of the rail bed and doing some cantilevered bridges because of the instability of the rock behind. And at the time, while the Rotary Clubs were very interested in doing that, it was a lot of money for them to raise. And so, well, it has never been given up on. I think it's been put in abeyance until perhaps there are some groups that can come together if that is the chosen project and do it. So that's just some background for you.
I just think that, we've been talking about this access to the waterfront for quite a while, and to me it just seems a lot of window dressing. How much is it going to cost for these other access strategies you're looking at? Like if it's going to cost that much money, maybe we should be looking a little bit farther down the harbor for other things like Rushbrook and that.
Yeah, no, all good points. I mean, I think a year ago we went through a broad-based community consultation, the Heritage Advisory Society, cultural groups, community recreation interests, and that really culminated in the Central Waterfront Development Vision. So Pinnacle Pellet remains committed to investing in projects that are going to enhance community access to the waterfront. The project that they had initially presented was determined not to be possible by CN because of operational concerns and safety concerns. So what Pinnacle wants to do is ensure they get behind what is the community priorities for waterfront access, which is a lot of what the development vision reflected, it was presented last year, is in essence going to achieve. So as I mentioned, we're waiting to solve some property issues, and Pinnacle is committed to investing in phases of those projects as quick as we can get them going. So certainly not window dressing. We're fully committed to it. There's a development vision that's really the community's vision for the waterfront that we're hoping to move forward with, including the Rushbrook Trail, which we think is part of those assets. And we're certainly looking towards working with Rotary to revisit that project and see if we could find a way to get it moving.
Councillor Thorkelson.
Well, thank you very much for coming. It's always nice to have a chance to talk with a representative from the port. A number of my issues have already been checked off. That's always good when council's of the same mind. I have some questions, I guess, that are regarding what you're doing, particularly with environmental, what the port's linkage is with the environmental concerns that we have regarding development out at your Ridley Island, Lalou Island properties. So I understand that I saw a notice in the paper that said that the coal terminal is applying to increase their discharge of water from their coal settlement ponds into the ocean. I also know that all three projects, Campotex and both LNG projects, plan to dredge what we haven't yet seen the results, but could be contaminated soil from the ocean bottom, and the contamination would be from the old pulp mill. And what is the port's role in trying to? You said your role on Ridley was to try to coordinate development. What does the port see its role as in trying to coordinate environmental impacts off of their properties?
We are, in any environmental assessment, a regulatory authority within those assessments, along with other agencies like Department of Fisheries and Oceans, BC Environment, and so forth. We also have a role to play as it relates to navigable waters and ensuring that the vessel traffic can be handled safely. So we are an RA within those processes, and have a seat at the environmental assessment steering committees.
I guess one of the major concerns is trying to dump contaminated soil at sea, and many of us have been wondering when the port did some dredging, we think it was the contaminated soil was dumped on land, and we're wondering if that is if the port is going to try to find a land site where contaminated soil, if it has to be dredged out of those 3 sites, could be sequestered.
I'm not familiar with the details of the environmental assessments and what has been contemplated from a dredging and dredge disposal in detail, but I do know that there's a couple alternatives as far as ocean dumping sites that are under review, and with also in respect to what might be in the dredge aid and what the potential impacts may be of the various disposal options, and contrasted against those will also be land-based disposal. But I'm not clear on what's actively being reviewed from an on-land disposal site.
It just seems that when you're talking about coordination, if you have 3 proposed tenants that are going to be doing a fair amount of digging, that maybe the port would be interested in coordinating a common disposal site. The other question we had is regarding what you talked about was safety, and you're concentrating on port safety, increasing port safety. We've been talking, the fishing community has been talking with the various proponents, and they are willing to come and sit on a fisheries liaison committee. That's what Enbridge called it. It would just be really, it's a safety liaison committee where we can discuss things like spill response. We would see First Nations on it. We would see all of the shippers on it, and the port, commercial fishermen and other mariners, sports operators, tour operators, to sit down and have a discussion about cooperative use and our cooperative concerns. And I guess we were wondering if the port is interested in either spearheading that or being part of that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, anything that we can participate in that's going to coordinate the diverse interests and users of the harbor only are going to contribute to better coordination. And we've seen some recent cases where we saw safety threatened because of from close quarters incidents between commercial traffic and small craft traffic. And as we're going to see growth and expansion of activity, those open lines of communication are critical. So I'd say we'd be more than interested in participating in that.
And regarding the coal, what is the port's interest in things like the discharge from those coal? Are you the ones who are going to determine that EA, or how does that work? I do get confused about who makes what environmental assessment decisions.
No, as it relates to a tenant like Ridley Terminals, anytime they're looking at a change to their operation or expansion, they'd be subject to environmental assessment processes federally regulated, with which we may participate in. And then we certainly enforce the requirements of their performance within our lease with the Ridley Terminals.
I think those are my questions. I want to thank you very much.
Are there any further questions from members of council? Thank you very much for coming here this evening. We appreciate the update.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening. Next, we have a presentation from Ms. Tessa Gill, who's the Corporate and Stakeholder Relations, and Mr. Derek Baker, the Community Relations Advisor for Pacific Northwest LNG. And this is the LNG project update. He looks older, actually, I think. Good evening, Ms. Gill. Good evening, Mr. Baker. Thank you for coming here this evening. The city's interested in what you have to say. Appreciate the update.
I want to thank you, Worship, and the Council for allowing us to speak this evening and giving an update. Ideally, we would have presented before our recent round of open houses, but I don't think the timing worked out with the by-elections. So
Right.
we do appreciate your time.
Yeah, those by-elections, they're inconvenient, but they're a must-have.
Yeah.
But I think we got a good candidate. At least that's what I've heard from other people.
That's good. We just want to give it again a project update. I apologize if some of this is repetition because not everybody will have heard this before. So we just want to make sure that people have an overview of the project. And I just want to start off that I don't know if everybody saw a recent press release. We have another project partner. And so while Pacific Northwest LNG is majority owned by Petronas, the Malaysian state-owned enterprise, we have 10% ownership by JAPEX and another 3% ownership now recently announced by Brunei, Petroleum Brunei. So, and we're continuing to have negotiations with other potential partners. And the partners in the project are essentially our offtake customers as well. So they're investing in the project as well as being our customers. So those negotiations are advancing, but Petronas will always maintain the majority, the operating interest in the facility as we bring the LNG expertise to the project as well. And this slide highlights our Progress Energy Canada is our sister company in the upstream development, so the exploration and development of the natural gas for our project. So as I mentioned, it's natural gas supplied by Progress Energy from Northeast BC. Our project is proposed for Lilu Island, which is within the district of Port Edward, and it's a proposed liquefied natural gas facility and export terminal. So we've also asked TransCanada to design, build, own and operate the pipeline that will transport the gas from Northeast BC to the Lilu Island, and that's the Prince Rupert Gas Transmission Project. So I do recommend if you have any pipeline questions to go and refer to their website or speak to a TransCanada representative. But at the same time, that is the pipeline that's, if you like, servicing our project. We do get asked quite a few questions about the site and why we decided on the site. And there was a process for considering many sites, and we eventually produced a short list to 16 sites. And we looked at several criteria to determine what would be a good site for us. And this is an example of some of the criteria. And, you know, within an existing operating port was good. Close to an existing labour base, somewhere where people can live and work at the facility. And there's many other considerations, environmental considerations being some of them as well. And this is just an example of how the facility could look. It's unlikely to change in some respects, where, you know, the location of the LNG tanks, for example. But I would just want to give you an idea of how much of the island is taken up by the footprint of the facility. The LNG train, and it's called a train because the process is in one big line. So the LNG processing facility, we're applying for approvals to start off with 2, with a further 1 being built in the future. And as you can see here, we're proposing a bridge from the mainland over to Lilu Island. And then there'd be a jetty trestle with 2 berths for the LNG carriers to berth and load the LNG. And here's another viewpoint showing, and I don't know if this can show on the television screens as clearly, but showing where we are relative to Florabank and Lilu Island. Our current proposal for a jetty trestle coming out past Florabank and off to the side of Florabank so that you're reaching naturally deep water. We have heard some feedback from the community about concerns about the jetty trestle. And there are 2 major concerns, if you'd like to categorize the concerns. One would be navigational access around the jetty trestle, and the second would be environmental concerns. So we've done a few things, and we've listened to the community because we really want to hear the concerns and try and mitigate where possible. So the first thing we've done is we've raised the height of the bridge from Skeena Drive to Lelu Island so that at most high tides, a vessel about the size of a gill netter could pass underneath. And so that's hopefully mitigating some of the concerns we have about navigational access, but recognizing not everybody travels across through Lelu Slough. And then the second thing is that we were looking hard at the possible options and design mitigations for the jetty trestle itself. So we've tasked our engineering teams to go back and have a look to see what they can do with respect to the navigational access for the jetty trestle. Recognizing that this isn't our decision alone on how these things work, because there are safety and security considerations that have to be taken into account when you design a jetty trestle and have vessels close by. So we'll be updating the community once we get some results of our studies. And again, for marine navigation, as we've emphasized, we've been in this business for quite some time, and the LNG shipping industry has an enviable safety record. The LNG carriers are specially designed vessels, and there are world-class practices and procedures in place. And as Sean mentioned earlier in the Prince Rupert Port Authority presentation, the Prince Rupert Port Authority has been working hard at getting out in front of what could happen in the future in terms of ensuring there are best practices, policies and procedures. We've also participated in a marine risk assessment called TERMPOL, which is a navigational marine risk assessment. We participated in that with BG Group, and the Prince Rupert Port Authority also participated. So moving on to jobs, we're asked this question frequently: what type of jobs are required for construction and operations? At peak of construction, 3,500 workers are envisaged to be at Lelu Island, and for ongoing operations, 200 to 300. A lot of this detail is available on our website if you want to refer to it again. But I just wanted to give an overview and an idea of the type of trades that will be required for both construction and operations. But one of the things I want to highlight in this slide is that you don't necessarily have to have a craft or be a tradesperson to have employment in the facility. So, approximately 50% of our workforce in operations will be process operators. But we do need to encourage people to complete grade 12 high school and think about have a bit more of a technical orientation. We recently invested in Coastal Pathways Partnership as a step in that direction, and we're looking at our workforce training initiatives right now to see how we can continue with the rest of the roadmap, if you like, to employment in these areas. Just want to highlight again the project schedule, and we're still on track for this. Final investment decision at the end of 2014. We would need our regulatory approvals in place in order to make that timeline, and our engineering designers are on track for that. We are hoping to submit our EIS, Environmental Impact Statement, probably in January, so in the next few weeks. And we're still looking at 4 years of construction, with the very first cargo possible at the end of right at the end of 2018, more likely commercial operations in 2019. So I just want to highlight that we're undergoing both federal and BC environmental assessment processes. We're on land within the Prince Rupert Port Authority, federally administered. So the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency is the lead agency in the review process. And as I mentioned, we're planning to have our EA application in early 2014. But because we are in both the federal and provincial processes, there's one submission, but there's essentially going to be 3 signatures, 1 federal, 2 provincial, in terms of the approvals that we're seeking. And I just really then, rather than going through these timelines, I just want to highlight, especially in the federal process here, that there's opportunities for public consultation throughout the processes. And we recently had our open houses in Prince Rupert and Port Edward, and both the BC Environmental Assessment Office and the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency were both present, and that was formed part of their consultation as well. And again, for the BC Environmental Assessment Office, we couldn't fit all of the little green triangles on here for the slide, but there's many opportunities for public consultation. In the 13th of this month is the time where the opportunity for public consultation closes for the draft application information requirements for the BC process. So what that means is that the guidelines for our assessment, the public consultation opportunity is closing in mid-December, but that's not the only time that you get to comment on the process. And the links to both SEER and the BCEAO are on our website as well. So if any time the public can put a comment in, have an opinion on the project, and we encourage you to do so. And I'm just going to go very quickly through the next few slides, but you can see some examples of some of the studies we completed in 2012. And in 2013, some of the ongoing studies as part of that environmental assessment. And some of these are part of our corporate requirements as well. So, which are usually a little more stringent than some of the regulatory processes as well. And here you can see a mock-up, if you like, a viewpoint, and mock-up of what you might see from Port Edward. And we deliberately designed the tanks to be the highest that they could be. The design is still to be concluded, but we just wanted to give residents an idea of what you could see, pretty much a little bit down from City Chambers there. And we're also conducting our second round of geotech studies. I just wanted to highlight to everybody, because if you're around Port Edward, you see some of the activity ongoing. And we're trying to then complete this work before the end of the year in order to form our EA assessment or application, and just to confirm everything, all the information that's required for the application. So that's both marine geotechnical work as well as terrestrial. And then we're willing to talk to anybody who wants to talk to us. So please let us know. Contact us. Our contact information is on our website. We continue to be engaged in the community, and this is ongoing process. We're not just in and out and just have one meeting and leave. We'd like to continue any dialogue that we have with anybody who wants to talk to us. And I just want to raise some of the concerns and questions that come up through our consultation. I already touched on the jetty trestle. Obviously, we get a lot of inquiries about jobs, skills and training. People are concerned sometimes about the social issues associated with the construction camp. And obviously, residents of Port Edward want to know what they can see, smell and hear. And recently, we hosted Port Edward Council to one of our facilities in Malaysia, so that they could have a look and see for themselves what a facility looked like and what you could experience. And next steps, continue close interaction with local government and the communities and First Nations, of course. We're continuing, every time we hear some of the concerns from the community, it's my job, my responsibility, and Derek's also, to feed that back to the engineering team and feed that back to the project team so that we can look at mitigations as early as possible. And one of the methods that we do that is we're opening our storefront community offices in Prince Rupert in December the 20th is our opening event. So look out for information on that, and we will put that in the newspaper as well. And then we'll have a storefront. We'll have a small presence in Port Edward one day a week in the old school in Port Edward, and that will be opening sometime in the new year. We are looking at development. We are in the process of developing a social impact management plan. Again, that will involve greater interaction with the municipalities in terms of how to manage and mitigate some of the potential issues, but also then maximize some of the economic benefits, etc., and opportunities that come with a project like ours. We're in the process of outlining a wider strategy for job skills and training, and Coastal Pathways Partnership was just the start of that process. And there will be more open houses, and they will also coincide with regulatory agencies' timing of open houses, because we recognize that there's a lot of meetings, a lot of consultation events happening right now in the community. And then this is an example of some of our community investments, how we've been working with the community. We really hope to continue to do so, but it isn't just about investments. We have been doing some volunteering work, and we hope to get we're growing our project team. Also, we have a presence here in Prince Rupert, but we also have a larger team in Vancouver now. So there's more opportunities to get involved and do some volunteering work as well. And if anybody has any questions, I just want to highlight our website, www.pacificnorthwestlng.com. So sometimes a lot of the information is on the website. If you have any questions, you can see how to contact us. And our recent open house boards are on the website as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the work that you're doing, keeping the city of Prince Rupert in mind as the service center for those in the region. And we look forward to sharing that information. I've asked the council here to also do some work with regards to projects and timelines and construction workers and direct and indirect jobs, as well as the Stats Canada multipliers, so that we can get some figures and extrapolate them and see the effect it's going to have on our healthcare, on our policing, our fire rescue. That sort of thing. So any work we can do together would be very much appreciated. I'll ask one question, and I'm sure council members have a few questions. Have you been doing any work with regard to monitoring of the weather?
Yes, we have, and we're sort of working a little bit with the Prince Rupert Port Authority and other proponents in some of this data as well.
Well, I bring it up because I hear a vicious rumor going around that Port Edward is approximately 20% drier than Prince Rupert, and I want to let you know that as the mayor, we would refute that publicly.
I thought it was sunnier, actually.
Sunnier? Not drier, just sunnier. Okay, well, thank you for correcting that. The other, just one question, but a little bit more serious in nature, of course. I can appreciate that you're having a good look at this and trying to do things in a way that minimizes the impact on the environment. And I'm not sure if locating your jetty and your dock on one side of Floral Bank is better than the other. But of course, if you were on the other side, well, you may be close to Kitson Island, which is a provincial park and a very enjoyable area with a nice sandy beach. At least you'd be away from the channel and the channel into Porpoise Harbor and the other docks which are planned on Ridley Island. Has there been any thought to that, or have you just been concentrating on the one side?
When we first looked at the better locations for the jetty, we did look at several locations all around the island, and we steered away from the other end of the island, if you like, closer to Kitson. One of the reasons was because we recognize that you have there's more tidal and current effects coming from the Skeena Estuary, and there was potentially a greater deal of dredging required because of the silt coming down from the Skeena Estuary. So that is one of the reasons why we sort of went to the other side, because there is more naturally deep water, even though we have to go out a fair way to reach that.
Right. Your trestle's still 2.7 kilometers long?
Currently, yes, yeah. But we are looking very closely to see if there's anything that we can do about that.
Right. Thank you. Other questions from members of council? Councillor Garon and Councillor Cunningham and Councillor Thorkelson.
Thank you for your presentation. In regards to the trestle, are there other facilities you own that have a trestle of any great length like that, or any problems with them?
I don't think Petronas owns any jetty trestles that are 2.7 kilometers or approximately that length, but we are aware of several facilities globally that have longer jetty trestles. So there are examples of 4 kilometers. I believe there's one of 5 kilometers. And generally, when you have a longer jetty trestle, you're dealing with if you like, it isn't the most efficient build, because obviously you have more infrastructure to build and you have a longer pipe for LNG, which needs to be insulated and the LNG kept cold as possible. But at the same time, you look at the total, balance, if you like, of the best location versus that efficiency.
So, is the line itself insulated?
Yes. Yes, because that is actually the only long stretch, if you like, of LNG piping. Once it's in the tanks and kept there, that is the one main stretch of LNG pipe, and that's heavily insulated.
Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham.
You say the bridge going to the mainland is going to be raised up enough for a gillnet to get under? Well, a lot of time that slough dries right up. So any vessel coming out at anything but probably high tide is going to have to now go all the way around the trestle.
So we did some monitoring. We took a look at this and we listened to a lot of, anecdotal evidence, if you like, from the public, and had quite a few interactions where people were telling us what they used, how. And we recognize that it has to be high tide. You have significant tides here, though, however, but it has to be high tide for any boat to use this, and people have to know how they're navigating through Lee Slough. But at the same time, in our monitoring, and we had a look at this, and people are using it. They are using Lee Slough. So as long as you raise the bridge, then they can continue to use the slough in the manner that they have been. And then the second thing we heard is that, and saw, was that there was a range of people who then hugged in the channel between Flora Bank and Leloo Island, and some people at high tide just go across Flora Bank. So we've seen a range of activities, but at the same time we listened to people who said that when there's serious weather concerns, that they would like us to continue to cut across between Flora Bank and Leloo Island. So that's really what the issue that we're looking at, is to try and figure out how to mitigate that concern.
Please turn your mic on so people at home can listen to you.
So with the trestle there's going to be no vessel traffic going underneath the trestle.
That's what we're looking at right now. So it's difficult for me to answer that question, because there are some regulatory authorities that have to be involved, and it's not just our discussion. We have to then work that out with the Prince Rupert Port Authority. There's marine and safety security requirements as well. So it's a more complex question, but it's something that we're looking at. And from a proponent point of view, we can definitely look at the design to see whether that's possible.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation.
Councillor Thorkelson.
Just one short question, Ms. Gill. Thank you very much for attending. And I was interested in whether your marine TDR is out. Technical data report, is it out for public consumption?
I don't think it is, but I can get back to you on that. I'm sorry, I'm not aware that it is.
Thank you.
Councillor Ashley.
Thank you for your presentation. Not being an engineer, what I'm going to say might not make any sense, but I'm going to just throw it out there anyways. With the trestle that's being proposed, and we also know that BG is proposing something just right across the channel. Obviously, whether one or both of you goes forward depends on a lot of things. But if BG was to go forward, and let's say, has there been any talk, I guess, number one, of you guys possibly sharing a dock? And then if there was that possibility, what I'm wondering is there some possibility of that trestle perhaps it would have to obviously go up high enough so that navigation go underneath, but that it could go across and then out on the other side, if that makes sense.
So I think you just highlighted one of the challenges of that solution. Really is actually going across, and obviously that's not just our decision. That involves another proponent, and who have also slightly different project timelines to us as well. So those are sorts of things that when we look at thinking out of the box solutions, obviously we look at those, but we can't look at those in isolation.
Any further questions? Thank you very much again for coming this evening. It's always informative, and it's the schedules in particular, and knowing that you're sticking to them gives us an idea of how much time we need to consider the effects also. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have a presentation from Mr. Conrad Lewis. This concerns the Tribal Native Tournament and an invoice from the year 2012. Mr. Lewis, good evening. Please make yourself comfortable there. The mic's already on, so that will enable people following by television to hear you.
Okay. Well, first off, I'd like to thank you guys for the opportunity to come here, and I do have some stuff that I wanted to present, but there were a lot of contributing factors that prevented me from getting stuff together. In 2012, we ran the third annual Tribal Nation Tournament, not Native Tournament.
Thank you. The agenda says Native.
Yeah, Tribal Nation Tournament, and it was our third annual, and of course, this tournament in its first year was excellent because everybody was mentioning, the need for not so much another tournament, but a tournament with a little bit of a twist to it. And I do have sort of an introduction to the tournament, or sort of an outlook of where we wanted it to go in 5-10 years or so, but definitely been a lot of struggles trying to get another tournament going. And so even having said that, 2012 turned out to be an actual extraordinary tournament, in a sense that we had an earthquake, I guess, in the Haida Gwaii area of 7 point something or other, and our tournament was actually going pretty good until the Saturday of the tournament, and that was when the earthquake happened. We finished off our second game of the evening, and we were going to go into our third one, and excuse me, and the earthquake happened. We heard about that originally earlier before the game, and so the game kept going on. Then city officials, or particularly the Civic Center recreational personnel, came and approached us and said, you know what, this is an evacuation area. We need to stop the tournament. Essentially, we complied, stopped the tournament. There were roughly around over 200 spectators at that time, and the tournament was stopped about 20 minutes after 9. We had 2 minutes left on the clock for the second game of the evening, and we still had a third game to go, but consequently it was all cancelled anyhow. So particularly the way it was handled, as far as I was concerned, as an organizer of an event and stuff like that, I wasn't very pleased at it. Just to make a note of that, because of the amount of people that left in fear, as opposed to the amount of people that actually came to the evacuation site, there was quite a difference in that, and. So all of the ones that left in fear consequently never showed up for our semifinals and finals on Sunday. And naturally that is actually the just over $400 shortfall that our tournament was subjected to. I immediately identified that problem with the recreation coordinator in the Chipscony Civic Center. I thought we had somewhat of a plan at sort of dealing with the extraordinary situation that happened, but that didn't transpire. It just kind of fell to the wayside. So consequently, I was forced, or not forced, I was recommended that I'd go downstairs, talk to the people down there, who in turn told me to see the recreation coordinator again. I told him I did that already and stuff, so it was just a matter of seeing, perhaps maybe coming in front of you guys and mentioning, the shortfall. Idealistically, I think what we're probably looking at is probably a request that just for giving that amount, but that's not it. I mean, the other plan that I had was probably the interest or whatever on there, or even going 50-50 on that shortfall, something like that. But all of that will be presented with the finances of that particular year. We could definitely bring that. I just wanted to come here quickly and just make note of it, official note of it, and stuff like that, and then see if we could work on there, because the time that I have to go as an organizer and a few other things that I'm doing now definitely makes it challenging to come to the front door or downstairs office and raise an issue and then having to be redirected. I was redirected twice, actually, so these are the things that I was hoping to bring up today, and maybe not so much a resolve today, but maybe an avenue that I could actually go work on directly, so that we may come to some kind of an understanding as to what we can do about that. The only reason I was brought that up again was the earthquake of 2012.
Right. Okay. Thank you. If I could ask you some questions for clarity.
Sure.
And of course, keeping in mind it's better to resolve these things sooner rather than later.
Yep.
And if you have some other information to submit, please do it in as timely a manner as possible. It's very hard for the council to deliberate on something unless we have all the information, and particularly your point of view, because we want to try and do things in a fair way as possible. So you were operating this tournament. You did well in the first year. And then in the second year, which is 2012, because there was a earthquake off of the Charlottes, a tsunami, and there was a concern, you were asked to vacate the building because the building is used as a resource center if they need to house people.
The actual remark I got was it was in an evacuation area, and that the Russell Gamble part of the Jim Ciccone Civic Center was used for people in the lower end of Prince Rupert, the lower lying areas of Prince Rupert were to come to this place.
Right, it becomes an emergency center. Yes.
Yeah, and consequently, I think I counted 27 people showed up.
Okay, yeah, well, it's impossible to predict how many.
Yeah, well,
so the amount that is outstanding, around $420 plus interest, is that representative of that 1 day's rental?
Actually, it's more than that. We average around 700, 800 or so. And this tournament is a fan-based tournament. Our expenses have been it's actually not 2010 that it happened. It was 2009, then 2010. The tournament actually didn't happen. Then again, it happened again in 2011 and 2012, and then the earthquake of 2012.
Right, so 2012 was the third year.
Yep.
So you're asking for forgiveness or some form of relief on this $420,000 plus interest. And can you tell me what that is representative of? This was the last day of the tournament? I don't want to assume anything here, which is why I'm asking the details.
Yep. It was the last day of the tournament. We provide, and this tournament is a money-making tournament, but at the same time, because I've organized so many years in this community, even though it is a money-making tournament, we make sure, or we have made sure, that each time that this tournament has happened, that we carefully set things like admission rates and stuff like that to coincide with making sure that the bills are paid. So even though it's a money-making tournament, at the same time, we didn't want to, look at say a $10 per session game thing. It was very small amount, the entry fees and stuff.
So the $420 outstanding plus the interest is representative of the tournament shortfall, or is it tied to the lease of the facility?
It's tied to the tournament. It's not necessarily a shortfall, because the tournament itself, the entry fees in this tournament we give back as prize money. And so the prize money is based on the amount of teams entered per division. So the $400 is not so much it's not so much just the amount that we lost. We actually, in the other two tournaments, we give banners and we gave shirts and stuff like that. And that particular year, fortunately, we decided, I think, I think in the early part of October to put it up. So we didn't actually really order the banners or the shirts at all. So if we were to traditionally go with what we'd done with the first annual and the second annual, the shortfall would have been in excess of $700 to $800. Thankfully, we didn't order those shirts or banners at all that time. And so the only thing that came as part of that shortfall was the gym time.
So what is the $420? I know what the interest is. What's the $420 represent then, specifically? Is it part the rental for one day? And what else is it in there?
I think it's a partial payment of Sundays. Sunday's the final day, because we have 4 games. We have 6 hours of reserved time, so we do that. So the 6 hour time frame was actually probably in excess of $500 or so, which is traditionally what we pay for 6 games or whatever. Right. So we did have like the $100 or whatever that went into it. It's just that the revenue from that tournament was just exhausted. That was plain and simple.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that, Councillor Garon, then Councillor Ashley.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis, for your presentation. I've got a few questions. I'm not sure why this has come to us at this point. I believe possibly it's because we don't have a policy for facilities that are being used that might be emergency service buildings during an event which such happens. So I don't think staff maybe has that tool to say, okay, yeah, we'll give you credit for that day you didn't use it. Or so. And my other question to you is, did you make a profit? Okay.
Actually, no. The $400 is the shortfall.
So you didn't make a profit at all. You're short $400.
Yes, actually, and then, like I was mentioned to your worship there, we didn't order.
Yeah, that's fine. And my other question, I'm not sure if it's for you or to staff, but how much is the facility per day that we rent to you?
As a user group of the Civic Center, it's in excess or in and around $47 an hour.
So you're charged by the hour, not by the day.
On the Saturday, it's a full day, so we get charged by the day there. And actually, even on the Friday, we get charged by the day. But Sunday, it turns out to be just 4 games. So then we switch to an hourly rate when the whole day isn't required.
Okay, so I guess my question to staff is this because we don't have a policy about people asking to leave a facility during an emergency event? Like, is there not a policy that staff can say, okay, we'll forgive you, half the day's rent? Like, do we not have a policy for
that? I don't believe that we have a policy with regards to that one specifically.
So I guess I'm wondering, do we need some kind of a policy for the Civic Center? Because sometimes it does turn into an emergency services center during time of an event. So it isn't always picked as that event or that venue or location. So I'm just wondering if we do have
we
to put
probably
a policy
could stand
in
a
place.
policy,
Okay.
because that is the the primary emergency
Yeah, because
services
I
center.
don't see the use of it this kind of thing coming to council. If we have a policy that it's a tool that staff can use, I don't see any
Right.
need for it to come here.
So just to clarify again, you're charged about $47 an hour, and you would have been using the place for 5 hours, 6 hours?
Yeah, 6 hours because of course there's presentations after
Right.
that. 5.5
Right, yeah.
if we speed it up, whatever.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ashley.
So I just want to make sure I've got this clear. So on the Saturday, which was when the evacuation notice happened, you had 2 minutes left on the clock for the second to last game, and then of course the last game was canceled, right? So was it 2 games that were canceled or one game that one? And
Yes, one full game and 2 minutes of the game before that.
Okay, and then the issue on Sunday, as I can see it, I understand that there were 6 games. Those games all ran, but the issue for you was that people didn't come to the games?
The the operation or the initializing or initiating the evacuation process and whatever, to me, and actually to a few of our members in particular, there was fear instilled in people, and I believe that fear would still be instilled, but I think that the way that it was instilled in them had a definite impact on the amount of people that attended on Sunday.
Okay, so, and I get the concern, and I definitely, like the Saturday, I think absolutely we should have a policy for. I mean, if people are being evacuated, obviously if you can't use the facility, it would make sense that we have some sort of refund policy because that's fair. The part that I'm trying to wrap my head around that I'm having a problem with is that there wasn't, even though I understand people didn't come back, there wasn't an evacuation notice on Sunday. Sunday was just a regular day. So if people chose not to go, while I understand that impacts the tournament, from like just guess devil's advocate position, I'd be like, well, that could happen anytime. The fear from the evacuation was the night before from the earthquake and the tsunami, which the next day wasn't really an issue anymore. And so for me, I'm not sure how I feel about those days. I definitely don't want to see, or that day, I don't want to see like a tournament or something that's providing something for the community to be hurt, but I also am not sure that I see that connection, because you can't say for sure that the people said, there might have been a few, I'm not saying there wouldn't, but they might have just been concerned about family in Haida Gwaii. I don't know why they didn't come, which is unfortunate, but for the Sunday, myself, I just don't see where the city would be responsible for Sunday. I certainly see where we'd be responsible for Saturday.
Maybe just to elaborate a bit more on that one, is the game that actually was canceled Saturday night and the game that was interrupted Saturday night, we actually squeezed that in on Sunday, right? So we traditionally would have had just the 2 semifinals and the 2 finals, but we had to squeeze in another game, and there was even debate whether we play the full game or just play off the last 2 minutes or a minute and almost 2. And so there was a bit of the overlapment into that is still the same people that participated that night. Those ones had to come, and of course their parents and their brothers and sisters and uncles weren't coming either, right?
Are there any other questions? Is there something else besides what you've told us? You said you wanted to submit something else. Is there anything else, and have you got any idea by when you could submit it so we could deal with this fairly quickly?
I could probably submit something to the next by the end of this week, easy, even in the next day or 2. It's just who do I submit it for, because it becomes kind of an issue of time if I have to come and present again to your next meetings here, right?
If you do a written submission and it's all inclusive, and you address it to Mr. Long, the city manager, he should be able to bring it to the council so that we can continue to discuss this matter and certainly let you know in as timely a way as possible.
Okay, I'd like to again just thank you guys all for that time. Again, it's just a matter of identifying extenuating circumstances, right? An act of God, if you will, or what have you. And so I see Pacific Northwest LNG in amongst the crowd now, and I see now a list of all of those names. Certainly, an avenue that's in the play is looking for corporate sponsorship of such a thing too, right?
Yeah. Okay. Let's not.
And then quickly too, the
Yes.
Port Edward thing, I kind of took offense to, but that's not an issue that we'll raise here either. So we'll say that for another day.
Sure.
I was raised in Port Ed.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And I'd like to welcome the new counselor to the chambers and stuff like that and stuff. And thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming down here. Okay, that concludes the petitions and delegations. Next, we'll go to the question period from the public, and it pertains to city operations. If there's anybody in the gallery who has a question about the city's operations, they're certainly welcome to come forward, state their names, use the microphone and the chair there, so that allows people who are watching at home by television to hear what you have to ask. We may or may not be able to answer your question tonight, but please come forward if you have a question to ask. And I'd ask that you, well, the council looks like very polite people. I can tell you that they've instructed me to ask anybody who's asking questions to take about 5 minutes, if that's at all possible. If I deter from that, I'm subject to, well, I won't tell you what I'm subject to, but please go ahead, though. Please state your name for the record.
Everybody knows me, but I'm Margaret Niche.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead, Mrs. Niche.
I just have a concern with reducing the speed limit to 40 in residential and downtown area.
This was from a discussion the council had some months ago.
Yes, and is also with the issue of almost, in the last year, seeing too many people already being almost run down.
Please go ahead.
Okay. And my other issue is accessibility to businesses that don't have a push button for handicapped people or women with strollers. Very difficult to get in. My other issue is snow and ice, where there's no businesses in the buildings, and why are not the owners clearing that off?
Right.
And my other issue is the bylaws, dogs off leash. That's that one.
Yeah.
And also an air raid siren that we used to have up 6th Avenue East for emergency alert, because not everybody's tied into the system.
The air raid sirens were done away with some time ago. They were sponsored, I believe, by the federal and provincial governments, and they quit the sponsorship many, many years ago. And they asked communities at that time whether or not they'd like to retain them. A lot of communities opted out, and I believe Prince Rupert was one of them, and that was the reason. But so we can get some order to this, I'd ask you to ask your first question again, and then we'll get a comment from the staff.
Okay. The speed limit to 40.
Okay, so you're suggesting that we don't or we do?
We do.
We do, okay. Mr. Long, perhaps you could provide a comment on whether or not that is still a consideration.
Yeah, we gathered that the ministry are looking into that.
Okay. So it's with the provincial ministry.
She's talking city streets as well as highway. Is that right, Mark?
I'm talking residential and city streets.
Okay, because we were just talking highway.
Okay. Okay, we were talking about the arterial highway, which is McBride Street down to near the foot of McBride Street where you turn on to 2nd Avenue all the way through to Five Corners and through Five Corners and down Park Avenue. So that's actually part of Highway 16 all the way down to the BC Ferry Terminal. Yeah. Okay, your next question?
And the other was the accessibility entry to businesses.
Okay. As far as I know, it's not mandatory for every business. When new businesses are built, there's certain updated criteria under the BC Building Code that they have to comply with, but I don't think legislation reaches back to buildings or stores that have been in buildings for, say, 10, 15 years.
But they should be.
Well, that's another matter. Your next question.
Okay, the snow and ice in front of empty buildings.
Yeah, Mr. Long?
I believe there is a bylaw that requires the owner to keep those areas clear of snow and ice. So it's just a matter of enforcing that particular bylaw.
Exactly. So who's going to get on their butts?
The bylaw enforcement generally responds in the afternoons of the day that it snows.
But it's not happening.
Yeah.
It's not happening. So that's it.
That's it?
That's it.
Let's see if council has any questions for you, if we could.
Okay.
And I'd ask you to, when you go to respond, to use the mic. That allows the people at home to also listen to you. But Councillor Cunningham.
Lowering the speed limit to 40, in my mind, is not the way to go. It's to get radar out there and enforce the existing 50, because in a lot of these cases, people on our street, we're neighbors, go flying down 8th East at 60, 70 kilometers an hour. And
Tell me about it, Barry.
And my feeling on this is that if we get and again, I don't know, somebody told me we don't have a traffic division anymore in the RCMP here, but I've seen them out checking cars and that. But, radar, it's a great deterrent. The speed limit, you drop it to 40, people are still going to speed, they're just speeding higher. If they're speeding at 50, they're going to speed at 40. It's not a deterrent to change the speed limit as much as get somebody out there saying if you're going to speed, you're going to pay.
Councillor Ashley.
So I know it's not a municipal regulation about the accessibility. Through you to staff, what I'm wondering is, do we know of any grants that businesses might be able to apply for in order to make their business more accessible for handicapped and or people with strollers?
I'm not sure. Mrs. Bombin or Mr. Mandrick or Councillor Thorkelson?
I'll speak to it. There are grants that do exist for that. It's just a matter of having access to them, and they're usually matching grants. So the home or the building owner is required to match the grant, whatever the requirement therein is. So.
Councillor Thorkelson.
I think those grants are first come, first served, because we're actually doing that at the Fisherman's Hall. And so I was just looking to try to find a grant to help us subsidize. It's a great deal of changing we have to do there. And there was no applications taken for 2013. It was federal government grant, and there was no applications taken for 2013. So I don't know if it was because we are after the halfway point and the grants have been used up, or they just didn't take any grants for 2013. So if anybody knows of any other ones, but I searched the web really thoroughly to try to find a grant. The other thing, though, I would like to talk about is that snow and ice removal. I'm glad you brought that up, because it wasn't just businesses that were not shoveling. That were not a vacant business that were not shoveling. Other businesses were not shoveling as well, and I think that the staff knows that they're going to have to do a better time. If we have another big snowfall like that remains, because there certainly were a number of buildings that were not shoveled.
That was an interesting time in which the snow came, because some people were actually out there twice. It came that quickly. Councillor Garon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I shoveled 4 times that day. I tried to keep up with things. Thank you, Mark, about the access for doors. I know they're highly expensive, so for an owner of a building right now that doesn't have any rental income, they're thousands of dollars, and then the maintenance on them costs a lot of money. So unfortunately, at this day and age and time in our city, I don't think a lot of businesses could afford to install those doors without a grant, of course, but they are very costly to maintain because they do break down. So it's a matter of having the funds and the money to put those into place, and I just don't see where a lot of businesses that are existing right now can afford to do that.
Yes.
I can say one more thing.
Yeah.
There are businesses that are in that position, and I know those people have money, and they should be made to do it. Amen. Thank you.
Is there anybody else this evening who wishes to ask a question pertaining to the city's operations? If not, we'll conclude. I'll ask council to adjourn and reconvene to the regular. Is it concerning your request this evening? Yes, that's part of the regular council agenda. So we'll handle it after this. We'll reconvene to the regular council meeting. We're in committee of the whole. Okay? Oh, you're quite welcome. Thank you for coming down here this evening. So I'll ask council to adjourn and reconvene to a regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. So I refer council to the regular meeting agenda, and I'll request council consider the recommendation to adopt the agenda for this meeting dated December 9th, 2013 as circulated with the addition of item 8B, and this is the Prince Rupert Crime Stoppers request for a letter of support. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Is there any discussion? Call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion is adopted. For council's consideration, there's a number of sets of minutes tonight. The first set for adoption comes with a recommendation, and this is the minutes of the special council meeting of November 18th, 2013. The recommendation is they be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. The next set are the minutes of a special council meeting of November 19th, 2013. The recommendation is they be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garon. Are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. Next are the minutes of a special council meeting of November 25th, 2013. The recommendation is that they be adopted. Moved by Councillor Garon, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. Next are the minutes of a regular council meeting of November 25th, 2013. The recommendation is that they be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. And next are the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of November 25th, 2013. The recommendation is that they be received. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Are there any errors or omissions? Councillor Thorkelson.
Your Worship, I just want it to be noted because it says that I was absent, that I was not notified of this meeting, and so it wasn't because I didn't have an interest of being there. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, and hopefully that communique problem will be rectified shortly.
Thank you.
There's no errors or omissions. I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are received. The last set of minutes are the minutes of the special council meeting of November 28th, 2013. The recommendation is that they be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Are there any errors or omissions? Councillor Thorkelson.
Your Worship, I was not informed that this meeting was on, so I again missed it, but not because of my own fault. Thank you.
Right, thank you. And I think we've got a way resolved to ensure that everybody gets notification, and hopefully it works.
Yes, and I think that will be resolved. But I just want it noted that I was not here because I was
through no fault of
neglecting
your
my
own.
duties.
Yeah, no, nobody would accuse you of you neglecting your duties. We realize it's through no fault of your own. There's no errors or omissions. I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are also adopted. We'll move down to reports and recommendations. And the first is a report from the executive assistant, and it concerns the community enhancement grants approval. There is a recommendation that Council approve the 2014 community enhancement grants as attached, and I'll recommend to the Council that the community enhancement grants in 2014 remain at the 2013 amounts, with the exception of the library and the visitor information center. And I make this recommendation because the city still has many outstanding issues to resolve. The completion of the sale of Watson Island is one, also the complete removal of the residual chemicals remaining on Watson Island. And of course, the city infrastructure is an ongoing concern between the streets and roads with base failure and need of repaving. We still have 25% of the city's water lines that are pre-1925 construction. Councillor Garon.
I'll move that recommendation, but I'll also move it with adding that the economic development, there's $30,000 less that we'll have to grant because of surplus, because we've had a vacant position there.
Right. Mrs. Bauman, is that, you could verify that, please?
There's a $30,000 surplus for this year. That's correct.
Okay. Councillor Ashley.
There's a couple of other things. So, like, I'm not seconding the motion right now, so I'll wait and see if there's a seconder. But there's a couple other things that I think need to be taken off and moved.
Okay, well, perhaps we'll withdraw the motion. Doesn't appear to be a seconder. So if you'd like to go ahead.
I agree in principle with what's said. I just think there are some additional things. So would make a motion that we keep the grants at the 2013 level with the following exceptions. That we take snowbirds off because there is no snowbirds.
Right.
That the $30,000 less for economic development because we have a surplus.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, that the visitor center grant, the library grant, and the tourism Prince Rupert grant decisions be moved to January because there's some other issues that we need to discuss before those can have final approval.
Okay. If you do that, though, they may start their business with the intention of continuing that year. I'm wondering if we couldn't deal with those at the next meeting of council, which would be December 23rd.
We don't have another meeting until January.
Well, if the wish of council is to have a meeting, we'll have a meeting. I don't really care at this point what has been scheduled. If the council wants to reschedule to have a meeting to deal with those issues, we'll certainly do that. But the choice is yours.
Okay, I will amend a little bit the motion because it still hasn't been seconded. I would put that the library get approved at the 2013 level, but that we consider in January whether or not to give them that increase that they've asked for.
Okay.
So that would be putting it there. And then in terms of the visitor center and tourism Prince Rupert, I still think both of those should be moved to the January meeting.
Okay. Very good. Is there a seconder to that? seconded by Councillor Guerin. Just so we've got this motion, and I actually thought as a result of the last Community Enhancement Grant meeting that the staff would have adjusted out those items, because we did request that at the meeting, and it's good of you to catch it. But Mr. Mandrick, could you please repeat the motion so there's no misunderstanding here? Okay, please go ahead.
And I just remembered because Ms. Bonman reminded us earlier that when we made the permissive tax exemption approvals,
yes,
we gave more money to the museum and tax exemptions, but at that time Councillor Thorkelson made a motion that got subsequently passed that during the grant process that I think $6,500 were supposed to come off of the museum because they got that in the tax exemption. So I would add that to my motion.
Okay. And that's fine with the seconder. Mr. Mandrick, when you put that together, if you'd repeat it. Please repeat that, Councillor Ashley.
So the last part was that during the property tax exemptions, we approved an additional amount for the Museum of Museum of Northern BC. But at that meeting, we also made a motion that we would then take $6,500 off of their grant request as a result of getting that property tax exemption.
That's with regards to the permissive property tax exemption, the annual bylaw.
So I've got moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Guerin, that we keep the grants at the 2013 level, remove the snowbirds portion, the $30,000 less for economic development because of a surplus, and with the Visitor Information Center grant and Tourism Prince Rupert be moved to the January meeting for decisioning, and the library grant be approved at 2013 levels today, but in January given consideration for an increase. And during the property tax exemption, additional amount that was approved for the Museum of BC, we would take $6,500 off their grant request due to the property tax exemption.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's a little complicated. Discussion. Councillor Thorkelson.
No, I think this is a good plan.
Thank you.
I was just complimenting Mr. Mandrick on his ability to put together that motion that quickly.
Yeah, I think he's a lot better than Mr. Long, but that's just my opinion. Councillor Ashley.
I just wanted to speak just a little bit to this, echoing some of the things that you were talking about in terms of the cost pressures that we still are facing. And I know a lot of people probably will be looking at the money that the port gave us and thinking, well, we should have a lot more money this year. But what I would like to just refresh people's minds about is that we did have a budget challenge in the spring. And the infrastructure deficit that we've been talking about has not gone away, and we could take that $2.1 million and spend it 100 times over, and that would catch us up. So people just need to be aware that we're trying to be cost efficient and use the money the best way that we can.
Thank you. It's not easy for a group of people in the community that get elected, and they want to do the best they can for the community, and they want to provide for the community, and they want to give to the community. And this council and the council prior have, in each and every year, had to spend more time saying no to people rather than saying yes. And certainly in the next 3 to 5 years, if things go as has been discussed, we'll certainly get ahead in terms of additions to the tax roll. But until we get rid of Watson Island, get that sold, get it back on the tax roll, and see it creating some jobs and assisting with the tax base, and until we look after some of the outstanding infrastructure problems, so that's the best way to describe them, it's still not easy here. Anything further? Councillor Cunningham, you're the this is your first meeting. It's never easy when you come in partway through a term and there's in some ways a steep learning curve. Have you got any questions about this, or you're comfortable with it?
I wasn't involved in this, and I have to agree with the majority and go along with it simply because I don't know the money situation as well as you guys do.
Right.
But the grants I see, I like to see the museum getting a little more than it got the last time. That's one of my pet peeves. That place draws tourism here, and it's getting it, and the library will deal with in January.
Right. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
If there's nothing, questions been called? Those in favor? Thank you. That motion's adopted. Next is a report from the Chief Financial Officer, and it concerns the 2014 Finance Plan Capital Purchases and Works. Comes with a recommendation that Council approve by resolution the proposed schedule for capital purchases and capital works so that City staff can begin to plan and organize for their acquisition and construction in the 2014 fiscal year. Mrs. Bombin, would you like to outline your report, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. As the motion states, this helps, by resolution, this helps the departments go ahead and start planning for the 2014 year and preparing all the tenders and necessary specifications for certain projects. Many of the projects planned for 2014 are funded out of utility revenues, appropriated surplus, reserves, and grants, and some have been rolled over or a continuation from the fiscal 2013 that they weren't able to complete or start. In particular, for this year, the fire department requires a new fire rescue truck to replace the one used by the department currently, which is 5 years past its replacement date. We propose financing that through the MFA. And one of the more particularly larger amounts to be spent this year in is with the recreation facility. However, this has been made possible as a result of the port interim payment that was received recently in November. There's some necessary large-scale maintenance items that will need to be addressed, as we just received a report on energy efficiency and some of the other maintenance issues that are going on there, and that's part of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the operating fund for the capital purchases budget. Public Works will get $295,000. The Recreation Center, an abnormally high amount, as you stated, courtesy of the assistance from the Prince Rupert Port Authority, which is $1.9 million. The Information Tech will get $90,000. The Ferry Docks will get $350,000. Fire Department $350,000. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police Detachment, Prince Rupert, will get $77,000. City Hall, you're going to spend $130,000. Land here is $25,000, and the golf course is $40,000. And I think that's a contractual agreement on that $40,000. So I'll ask Council's consideration. Councillor Ashley.
I'll move the recommendation that Council approve by resolution the proposed schedules of capital purchases and capital works so that City staff can begin to plan and organize for their acquisition and construction in the 2014 fiscal period.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Garon. Is there any discussion? These questions have been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion's adopted. Next is a report from the Chief Financial Officer, and this is regarding the 2013 Budget Efficiencies Report. It comes with a recommendation that Council receive this report for information purposes. Mrs. Bombin, if you'd please outline your report.
Thank you. At the last council meeting, I believe, or one of the special meetings that we've had, it was requested that we come together and just provide you with information on some of the efficiencies based on the budget crunch that happened this summer and the request to become more efficient within our departments. And we've put together a report identifying how we've been able to actually manage to stay within budget. and not utilize any of the surplus. First and foremost, we saved almost $250,000 through vacancies that were not filled for a number of months, and one management position being eliminated entirely. The ferry workers collective agreement was ratified with a 0% increase. That saved $20,000. Recreation saved about $20,000 by completing some repairs to the arena stairs in-house instead of going to a contract. Their leisure guide was reduced and in size and was made in monochrome instead of in color. That reduced some of the cost. Hours of an office clerk were cut back and 2 projects were postponed. Public Works, they only hired 2 summer staff, which is 8 less than normal, and there was also no backfilling of holiday staff this year. The department also postponed work on both the airport ferry dock and stage 3 of the Hayes Creek sewer project to 2014, and the Woodworth Dam project did not go to the construction phase this summer due to the unavailability of engineers, contract labor, and city staff. IT designated its replacement technician as a webmaster. This saved approximately $50,000 for the new website. The manager of IT has also now taken over all IT support duties, and the fire department redirected budgeted training and conference funds to truck maintenance and recertification of equipment. Lately, much of the savings has been derived through doing more with less people. It is hoped that future growth will bring much needed resources back to the city to increase needed capacity.
Thank you. I'll ask Council's consideration of the motion. Councillor Ashley.
Well, just before I make the motion, I just wanted to thank staff for bringing this forward. I have been asking this for a little while because there's been a number of people that were wondering how did we manage to get to the point where, we weren't in trouble anymore. And I really wanted people to see the different things that staff have done in order to try and keep the city budget balanced and the type of effort that they've gone to. So thank you for that. And I'll make the recommendation that we receive this report for information purposes.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thorkelson. You have a comment also?
Yes, I want to thank all of the workers that worked for the city. If we go through here, we can see that everybody has really made a contribution. We see that, talk about ferry workers, talk about CUPE, recreation saved $2,000 by completing repairs using our own staff, our own people. Public Works and Engineering operated with a bare bones staffing level and no backfilling of holidays, less summer staff. The technician designated as replacement technician as a webmaster, so there's again doubling up of duties, and the fire department sacrificed some of their budget for training and conference funds, and I think that it says that lately much of the savings has been derived through doing more with less people. And I want to say that if it wasn't for the dedication of everybody who works for the city, that our savings would not have occurred, and we would have been in a pickle. And I want to thank people for working harder, working smarter, and also for working with fewer people. I also want to say that I, as a councillor, would not expect this to continue. That we can't just expect our any increases that we get in the city budget to go just to infrastructure, because part of the infrastructure are the city workers and people that work for the city, whether they're in management or whether they're in union positions, and that we have to ensure that infrastructure, our city staff infrastructures, also has some investments. So I just want to say thank you very much, and that we do have to keep our city workers and city staff, city workers in all of the unions, and also our exempt staff in mind when we're looking at our budgets.
Thank you. And of course, I spent the whole year here while we transitioned, whether it was a city manager or a treasurer or a corporate administrator, so that there was some consistency, and everybody did, when we had those shortfalls, give a little extra and help out, and a few people learned a few things along the way. but we came through the year. It's quite a change when you really, in effect, change every one of your executive level management. But people right the way through the organization, if they could help, they did, and it is appreciated. We look forward to better years here, and I'm hoping that with the new city manager and the new executive staff that we set a tone where the door is always open. I know my door is always open to members of the public and to members of the staff, and in fact, I get a lot of visitors and some non-local people that are interested in the community, and some of them have come in and invested in the community. But really, we're all working for the same organization. And really, that organization is each individual member of the city that's a resident. And it's always important to keep that in mind. And sometimes on projects, there's a disagreement. It's not about the project per se, it's more about the way to do a project. But everybody's able to talk their way through it and continue. And it's hard. I know it's really hard for the council to go through the budget every year and to look at what needs to be done and what we can't put off. And some of the things that are priorities, then arbitrarily, because of shortness of staff or shortness of engineers, they get bumped. But everybody tries to do their best, and I'm quite convinced of that. I'll ask council to consider the adoption if there's no further comments. Councillor Garand.
I'll just ditto what everybody else had to say, because I really want to thank staff and all the union workers for having to pull through all that transition we went through in the last year. And I think everybody's worked really hard, and I just want to commend them all for doing a great job. Thanks.
Question. I was going to provide one more comment, but I've said it before numerous times, so I'll spare everybody. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion's adopted. Next is a report from the corporate administrator, and this concerns the 2014 council meeting schedule. The recommendation that council approve the 2014 meeting schedule, and I'll ask Mr. Mandrick, the corporate administrator, just to explain the change there. So it's interesting when you sit back and take a look at things and use an analytical mind, how you can through the rescheduling for next year make it more convenient for everybody, because staff have actually figured out a way that we don't bump into statutory holidays and then have to move dates. So Mr. Mandrick, if you would, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. In doing an analysis of the previous council schedules for the regular meetings, it was determined that it wasn't always in the best interests of the business and the needs of council. So we took that away and had a look at it and how we could better align the calendars for each of the council members. And one of the ideas that we came up with was to not be so stuck on the second and fourth Mondays of the month, but rather be more flexible so that always the regular council meeting will be held on a Monday, but where there's a statutory holiday, it won't have to be bumped any longer. We've also taken into account the conferences that council from time to time attend, and we wanted to make sure that there wasn't a conflict of interest in that, or conflict rather in that sense. With that, I'm seeking council's approval for this calendar.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
While I appreciate staff going through this, I actually disagree. I think that we should be having 2 meetings a month. We were elected to keep business going, and I think December, it makes sense because it's Christmas holidays. Over the summer, we already kind of spread it out, so there's 3 over the 2 months. But when I look In January, I really think there should be 2. If we only have 1 in December, we should have 2 in January. In September, we usually go to UBCM, and we usually need to talk about things, and I don't think 1 meeting is enough. So I have a different proposal. I understand about trying to miss statutory holidays. I agree we shouldn't be having meetings on the statutory holidays, but I really didn't have a problem with if it's on a Monday, the statutory holiday, we just had the meeting on the next day. So I'm going to move a motion, and then it'll either get seconded or it won't. So I'm going to move a motion. It's got a few changes to the calendar.
Okay, perhaps it might be easier if you did it this way, and that would be to make a motion to adopt what's here, but add in a date for another meeting in January, add in a date for another meeting in September?
It won't work
Okay.
because the dates, in order to have at least 2 weeks between the meetings, the dates don't coincide.
Okay, please go ahead.
So what I am going to propose is that in January, there be a meeting on the Monday the 27th, so that would be added in. February would be changed so that we would meet Tuesday on the 11th and then on Monday on the 24th. March, April, May, June, July, August can all stay the same. Then what I was in September, what I would recommend, what I am making in my motion is that we meet on September 2nd, the Tuesday, and then on the 15th, which would be the week before UBCM. October would stay the same, November would stay the same, and December would stay the same.
Okay, Mr. Mandrick, have you been able to keep up with that?
Yes, Your Worship, I've captured those dates.
Thank you. Is there a seconder to that? Well, I'll second it for discussion purposes, certainly. It has some merit. Councillor Thorkelson.
I just didn't get the September one.
Please repeat that, Councillor Ashley.
September would be September 2nd, which would be the Tuesday, the day after Labor Day, same day that school starts. And then the 15th, which would be the Monday. It would be the week following.
If you look on the back page there to the report, it shows the dates that were affected by, and it'll show the week of the 22nd to the 26th as Union of BC municipalities. So the motion has been moved. I've seconded it for discussion purposes. Comments from members of council? Councillor Ashley.
Well, I'm just going to speak very briefly to it. There are lots of times where things come up, even with the amount of meetings we have now, where we have to hold special meetings because something comes up that's important. And there are things that I think are, of importance that we need to meet usually more than once a month. If for some reason there's nothing to be talked about, it would be easy enough for staff to tell us, well, we don't have anything to talk about, we can cancel that meeting. But I would rather have a meeting canceled than not to have one scheduled in the first place.
Rather than leave it at the call of the chair. Right. Councillor Garon.
I kind of like the way that he's proposed it, but I do think January and September should have two meetings. So I'm debating on whether to change the other dates. I think the rest of it's fine. I think January should be the 6th and the 20th, and September should be this. Okay, 2nd is the Tuesday and the 15th, because I do think we need a couple meetings before we go off to UBCM.
I wouldn't be opposed to changing the January one to the 6th. What did you say, the 6th and the 20th? I would accept that as a friendly amendment because it still does the same thing I wanted to do.
That's okay with the seconder.
Okay.
Councillor Thorkelson.
I'm easy with anything, so just you guys can negotiate this. I though I do agree that we should have 2 meetings in January. I don't really care which Mondays they are, and
right.
And I don't have problems with Tuesdays either. And the same thing in September. I think that's after a summer holiday. We probably need to get back cracking. So anyway, so I just wanted to let you know, Gina, if you and Anna want to discuss this. And negotiate Thursdays and Tuesdays and Mondays, it's fine with me.
Okay, I'll go with the friendly amendment.
Mr. Mandrick, have you got the friendly amendment?
I do, Your Worship. We'll be changing from January 13th to January the 6th and the 20th. We'll be changing our February dates of February the 11th and 24th, to February 11th and 24th from the 3rd and the 17th. And September 8th will be moved to the 2nd and to the 15th. And the rest will remain the same.
Okay. Thanks for your valiant efforts there. Trying to work it out so it's seamless. Did the city manager have anything to do with this, Mr. Mandrick?
He had nothing to do with this.
Yeah. Well, you're letting him off light. Okay. Motion's been made. It's been discussed. Call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion's adopted. Next on the agenda is the acting mayor's schedule for the 2014 year. And it comes with a recommendation that council adopt the revised acting mayor's schedule attached to this report. So for people at home in 2014, it shows, or it proposes, that Councillor Garon will be the acting mayor if needed in January. Councillor Cunningham would cover February and March. Councillor Ashley would cover April and May. Councillor Kinney would cover June and July. Councillor Carlick-Pearson would be August and September. Councillor Thorkelson would be October and November. Councillor Garon would be December, but we're anticipating an election possibly in October or November. Just in case all else fails, the staff has prepared us for the whole year. Councillor Ashley.
I'll move that we adopt the acting mayor schedule.
Okay, it's Councillor Thorkelson. Is the schedule good with you, or?
Well, I was just wondering, I'm not too concerned about myself, but I was wondering about Councillor Cunningham, whether he thinks that he'd be prepared to do it in February. If not, then trial by fire. I'd be prepared to change, but if you're comfortable with that, Councillor Cunningham, it doesn't matter to me.
Well, he runs the odd meeting with the support of staff. Very astute of you, though. Yeah. In light of the former report. Yes.
I'm quite sure I will be mentored if I need to be.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you.
Straightened out.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded, the acting mayor's schedule for 2014. Any further discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That is adopted. Mr. Mandrick, you've got those changes? Thank you very much. Okay, there's a report from the corporate administrator, and it concerns a workshop that was held, and this is a Northwest Community Action Plan, and it's the council received this report for information purposes. But Mr. Mandrick, you attended because members of council were at other meetings. Perhaps you could just give a bit more outline about the report for those people at home and for the council members as to why it was important to attend.
Thank you, Your Worship. The meeting was very worthwhile in attending due to the fact that it had so many other communities from the Northwest region involved, and what it gave everyone the opportunity to do is to have a look at how other communities were operating and how they were handling certain situations and how we might synergistically work together. So a number of the items that we covered were business development, housing, shadow populations of large work camps, and that was a major discussion because the impacts of having communities taken over, in a sense, by these shadow communities of the work camps was quite a concern for a number of communities and something that we need to look for going forward as well. Healthcare support, transportation, and just general synergies of what we could do to work collectively and address all of our concerns in a way that was, communicative and cooperative. And so it was well worthwhile, and I met a great number of people, including the Minister Oakes, who I had great discussions with.
Right. Thank you very much. As council's consideration of the report, Councillor Ashley.
I'll move that we receive the report for information purposes.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? seconded by Councillor Garon. Any discussion? Any questions? Hearing questions been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That report is received for information purposes. The next item is correspondence for action. There's a letter from the Northwest Community College, and this is concerning an innovative School of Marine and Coastal Studies. Comes with a recommendation that Council write a letter of support for the development of a Prince Rupert-based school for the purpose of marine and coastal studies. I'll ask Council's consideration of this. I'm taking them at their word here that it will be based in Prince Rupert. We've already lost a program here once already. Councillor Ashley.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Any discussion? Yes, please go ahead.
Just very briefly, I mean, I think it makes sense for that type of a program to be here in Prince Rupert, and especially if it is in Prince Rupert, then that's so much the better. It just helps out our college. So,
Thank you. Anything further? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. There is a request tonight, and this is from the Prince Rupert Crime Stoppers. It's a request for a letter of support. Mr. Mandrick, would you please read the request?
Thank you, Your Worship. The request came in from the Crime Stoppers as they are applying for a $20,000 grant, and they're seeking Council's resolution of support in doing so.
So the plan is to create a self-sustaining community garden which would employ at-risk youth and other members of the community in food production. A partner in the project is the Prince Rupert Community Enhancement Society, which is planning to start a community kitchen to utilize produce from the garden, and School District 52 may also be involved in the project at a future date. It says, should the application be successful, funding will come from the Civic Forfeiture Office in partnership with Victim Services and Crime Prevention Division of the BC Ministry of Justice. And this has come to us because they must have a submission by no later than the close of business on Tuesday, December 17th. Councillor Garon.
I'll move that we write a letter of support, but I've got a few questions. So
Certainly. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we write a letter of support. And your questions, Councillor Garon?
I'm just wondering where this community garden will go, and or if you're piggybacking on top of the existing community garden we have in town, or I just need a few more details. I think it's a great idea.
Certainly. Good evening, Constable. Would you please come forward? It's Constable Matt Erickson, looks after youth with regard to the Prince Rupert Detachment, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the chair of this group, and that is former Councillor Mr. Cook, David Cook. Good evening. Please go ahead.
Thank you very, very much, Your Worship, councillors. Long and short of it, I recently had an opportunity to travel to the University of British Columbia, where I spoke specifically to youth initiatives that we're employing here in Prince Rupert, and more specifically, how we're bridging gaps between law enforcement and young people, and developing those relationships, leadership, stewardship, so on and so forth. As part of that lecture series that I partook in, I had an opportunity to hear another very prominent man named Peter Ladner, who was a city councilor for Vancouver. He recently created and wrote a book about sustainable food resources, renewable resources, so on and so forth, that has recently been implemented in Vancouver through community gardens, rooftop gardens, so on and so forth. With that same idea and that same model, it kind of got me thinking, okay, well, how could something like this work here in Prince Rupert? As I work very closely with youth in partnership with School District 52, another one of the groups that I work closely with is Crime Stoppers, and how we can, again, continue to foster those relationships and bridge those gaps between service providers and young people. So with that, I came back with the idea, and the kind of the vision that I saw was the creation of a community garden where we could get young people involved, partake in this project where they would have some kind of a buy-in, giving them something to do, something to look forward to, in turn tying that back to community, and getting the involvement of elders as part of that process. With that, and a garden itself, if you look at some of the research that has been done by Peter Ladner's group across the world, they've been able to demonstrate that having this kind of, I guess, cohesiveness amongst various groups and partnerships within community has been very well received. They've been able to demonstrate lowering of crime. They've been able to demonstrate just a very kind of successful planning when it comes to cities and what these partnerships look like. So essentially what we're proposing and why we've come today to request your support is I can say, and I've spoken with School District 52 and I can speak with regards to the project. I had pitched the idea to them, and in fact Charles Hayes was currently in the process of creating its own community garden. So they had pretty much everything in place to kind of move forward. But again, I wanted to have something that wasn't specific to just Charles Hayes. Of course, as you can imagine, community is very, very important, especially to the organization that I represent and the various community groups that we have here in town. So we wanted to look at how that partnership could essentially be enhanced to take things back to community, and what would that look like. So with this grant proposal, what we're looking to do, and we have the space already developed to answer the question that was brought up, and this garden is going to be developed at Charles Hayes Secondary School. They provided the space. They have now committed $50,000 in funding to start the program. Now, of course, as you can imagine, it's a major undertaking. So we looked at this civil forfeiture grant where we can apply for a one-time funding of $20,000 to help them get a little bit more momentum in terms of that program. The long-term vision that I see for this type of initiative is, again, it's going back to community. Within cities across the world, when it comes to renewable resources, food resources specifically, it's become very popular. People want to buy locally. They want to shop locally. They want to see that on their menus. And that ties right back into the economic structure of a city. And if we can create this garden with these partnerships, give it real momentum involving CES, community-based victim services, all of these various partners, we can create something that's going to be pretty amazing, where we can create a farmer's market. We can get back to selling direct to consumers here in town. Long term, I see it being tied into the food fish industry during the summertime, and ideally I would love to have a board that would be created, and we would have youth as part of that board. We would have city, RCMP, elders within the community, where the funds that were generated from these food resources could then go into supporting youth initiatives within Prince Rupert. So you look at longevity and what that would look like, something that can be passed down and leave a real legacy within community, and that everybody can kind of have a proud ownership of. That same template can also then be applied to some of our other outlying coastal communities. And when we start looking at self-efficiency, so on and so forth, that's where you can, again, start to see a real benefit to this type of a program, this type of initiative, and what it's going to look like. So essentially, that's the direction we're going.
Yeah, it sounds very encouraging. And it's interesting that people would like to take it on. Is this going to be inside a greenhouse?
Yes. So
Okay.
Right now we're looking at the purchase of 2 greenhouses that are going to be 20 by 20 feet.
Okay. Yeah. I see from your supporters in the back gallery, I've got you, Councillor Garon, that you have somebody there who's got expertise in growing potatoes in rubber tires. So I know you're in good hands, because I used to do that with his father, Councillor Garon.
I would hope you'd be doing some outside gardening as well.
Whatever works.
I grew up with a grandfather in town here, and he grew everything in a greenhouse and outside and provided the family with year-round vegetables, and I know it can be done here, and I wish you all the best of luck. And there's a great resource of people out there in the community who know how to go about growing food in Prince Rupert. So,
Councillor Thorkelson, Councillor Ashley.
Oh, Your Worship, I certainly have been impressed lately with the level of civic involvement that this present detachment of the RCMP is showing. I've been on council for 8 years now, and I don't think I've seen the kind of involvement that the RCMP have been taking the community, both of the longboarding discussion and workshop with youth and the community, and also this. It's a real pleasure to see this kind of involvement. One of the things that and I think it's just a follow up to Councillor Garon's question about the garden. There is a community garden. I think this is a good project, and it's a good project, but you may want to have some links with the community garden that is at on McKay Street. Yeah, Richie, and has been supported also by the city, and it had a market this year at the Civic Center a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago maybe, as part of their function. They had a market, and they are tied in with the group and Salmonberry Trading Company, and which is a group that's been running the farmers market, but it's mostly been goods done by local people, although some people come down from Terrace with food, not very many though. So I mean, I think this is great, but I think the tie-in should be made, and I think you should maybe contact the people from the McKay Street project, the McKay Ritchie Street project, and see how you can link with them, because they are doing outside gardening, and along with the greenhouse gardening we could actually maybe see something that's a year round, may have a farmers market that can have year round products. It's a wonderful project, and I'd like to say thank you very much.
Further comments? Councillor Ashley.
I just wanted to thank you guys for coming as well. I knew a little bit about the project because there's quite a few teachers that are involved in part with the greenhouses and the whole garden, and so I love to see that this is expanded beyond like the school, and it's going to be a community thing, because I think that's the kind of thing that's going to make the project just become something that's more than just something that happens at the school, something that just means more, and like the connections and things. So I like to thank you for like kind of making it bigger and looking at those different options.
You rather than use domestic vehicle tires, if you get tractor tires, you could have a huge harvest. And if you grow the red potatoes, there's less starch in those. And the other pointers, I'll have to leave it to your supporters in the gallery there. But thanks very much. Very worthwhile project, and council certainly supports it.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Questions been called. Those in favor? Thank you. The letter of support, and I understand you need it right away, so if you talk to Mr. Long, perhaps we can get it written tomorrow, and I'll certainly I'm here every day, so I'll be around to sign it. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to report from the city manager. Mr. Long.
Thank you, Worship. Just wanted to bring council up to speed on a few things some of which were spoken about earlier, so I won't repeat them, but this is just to go over some of the projects that have been moved from this year to next year, so you're up to speed on that. Some of the landfill blasting and crushing contract, the project was tendered and awarded in 2013, but the work will be started and performed over the next 4 years. The LED light street light project was awarded and performed in 2013. We're still finishing, continuing to find and install additional additional LED lights. Hospital Summit drainage. The project was designed in 2013, be ready to be performed. Currently, it's in the hands of the lawyers and the strata. Bridge repairs. This project was held from 2013-2014 due to budget and scope concerns. Airport ferry dock, likewise, the liquid waste management program stage 3 will be ongoing between now and 2014. Duncan Road, again, ongoing for the next 2 years. Hayes Creek, contract 3, you heard about that earlier, will be moved, some work done in 2013, moved to mostly to 2014. Woodward Dam repairs, same thing. And our strategic water plan, which will lay out and has some applicability to some of the capital projects that were in our capital plan. And that's just to update you on what's been going on in terms of engineering, that we've been moving projects from 2013-2014. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ashley.
I just had a question through you to Mr. Long. If people have noticed like certain street lights that are out, would the best way be for them to just email, like who should they email, you or?
Well, certainly they can email me or His Worship, but more practically, probably better to email Bill Horn.
There is actually a telephone number that people can call and report it, and if you can relate the street light to the house adjacent or the house behind, then it gets on a list. And people generally do notice more of them this time of year. When we start to get into May and June and the days get longer, it's not as prevalent.
Well, there's been a couple of people that have mentioned it to me, so I said I would try and find out where it would be best to send that information.
An email that's the most practical. Then there's a piece of paper that we can make sure it gets to the right place.
Okay, we're down to reports, questions, and inquiries from members of council. Councillor Thorkelson.
I have two. The first one is I've passed it out. Nobody's had a chance to read it, I'm sure, though. Is in terms of reference on community level service impacts coordination, and it is a group, and I think Your Worship probably knows more about it than I do, but it's a group that says it's a multi-level interagency coordinating table to ensure broad provincial response on local services that will experience extraordinary peak demands arising from LNG and other major industrial developments in the Northwest. So this looks to me like a response to, a partial response anyway, to some of what our communities have been saying is we don't know what our needs are going to be. Some of the things, Your Worship, that you're talking about earlier, what's the healthcare needs going to be, what are the educational needs going to be, hospital impacts and that kind of thing. And there's apparently they've had 3 meetings according to this.
Well, this is the first time I've seen the terms of reference, but I did go to a joint meeting between Prince Rupert, Terrace, and Kitimat. I think there was representatives there from Kitimat Village. I don't remember anybody being there from Stewart, and it was to talk about, in a conceptual way, the impact that a variety of these projects could have on communities here in the Pacific Northwest. And I believe Mr. Long has had a conversation with some of the local government managers about this sort of thing, but there's only been one meeting to the best of my knowledge, or one that I was invited to anyway. Mr. Long.
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. I believe these terms of reference feed out from a meeting where there's a working group which we have been invited to. Due to the shortness in the calling of this particular meeting, we're not able to attend it, but I've asked Corinne to become part of that working group and work through this particular process. Now, where this interfaces with the political arms of our organizations, I'm not that clear. So far, we've only been asked to work with a working group to try and come. And really, what, as I understand this terms of reference to help go forward and obtain a contract from some consulting group to actually come back and look at what all the impacts are. So I think that's what this piece is about. But there are a number of processes. One of the reasons why I think Mr. Mandrick went last week to go to Prince George, basically to talk about many of the same things with the minister, our minister. So I think there's a lot going on, and not sure it's all kind of on a clear agenda to me yet. But clearly this particular one looks to be an issue which we can engage in, and I think we have said we would be. I've had a number of conversations with my counterpart from Kitimat and from Terrace, looking to talk just amongst ourselves about where how to kind of start to manage this at the upper level, so we get some understandings of impacts. Then we'll come back to our councils. But that's not to do necessarily with this. This is a provincial initiative, and so far we're trying to feed into it, and we'll see how we do.
Dale Richardson from the Economic Development here, Provincial Government Office, is involved, and also his counterpart in Terrace, which has a regional focus, and his name is Tavis McDonald, and he is also involved. And this is aside from, I believe, the $150,000 that is available to local governments to do a plan for some adjustments to their local economy going forward as a result of these projects. And the application for that, I believe, is through our own ministry, which is the ministry responsible for local government, and the official name is the Ministry of Community, Sport, and Mr. Long, if you could help me out there. Cultural Development, there you go. Please go ahead.
Well, I've heard that this was in relation to that $150,000 as well, but I'm not. And if that $150,000 is just for us, or if it's a regional district, or if it's for the whole region. And it says working with local governments and regional partners, provincial service providers and service funders will identify critical and serious risks to maintenance of service standards. So during the peak of industrial development activity under each scenario. Provincial agencies and ministries will then develop an action plan. It just sounds so removed, and I really think we need to be involved in it. If they're going to be developing action plans for us, that we need to be involved. So I'm just concerned that...
I agree with you. It sounds that way, but so far they've invited the communities to be at the table. And the meeting I was at was very preliminary. And they said there's more to follow. But I think it only moves as quickly as the provincial government and their counterparts, and then the local government administrators can move it along. Mr. Long.
Yeah, maybe just to give a bigger context, I think what we as staff are doing for the City of Prince Rupert is what I think was directed for us to do by council, which was to start to understand the context of the impacts that some of these things would have on the city going forward. And as a result of that, we've done, the workshop that we did with all the proponents and with the EA process, or the environmental approval process. I don't know. They call it EA. I'm not sure what that stands for. But anyway, that's a provincial process that the proponents have to go through. And you'll remember with one of those presentations, the socioeconomic impacts, or socioeconomic impact management, is where we as your staff are trying to focus on understanding what kind of input we should give in that process to indicate what what the social impacts are that we're concerned about in that context. So we're doing that on the ground. The number one priority that we've determined is to have a good understanding of the baseline information that's necessary before we start to talk about impacts. So we've proposed a program, or actually moving forward on that program to put together how we would actually get all of the demographics information that councillors repeatedly kind of asked for. Let's know what the age of our housing is. Let's know what the demographics of our housing are. Let's know what the service levels are to those housing. Let's look at the pieces of property that we might be able to contribute to this hyper-economic activity if it was to come forward. So we've been focusing on the baseline information. We'll be going towards the proponents and the environmental evaluation process to say we need resources to do that. In addition to that, we're putting together, I think, a kind of a, I don't know if I call it position paper, where we're putting together a letter which will go forward to the to respond to the environmental process, saying these are the things that we think are important, not so much in terms of negative impact mitigation, but what can positively come to this community as a result of these activities. And that I think is a little different twist on how this thing is being seen. And I think your staff, I know at the executive level, we've worked really hard to kind of come up with a bit of a framework, and I'd like to bring that to council and maybe just send it out to council. We've got a deadline of December the 13th to respond, but depending on how you understand what that means, that's respond to the kinds of things that they will be required to supply information towards in terms of our expectations. So we're working diligently to put together at least sort of laying out the need to have baseline information, and then the next piece, which is okay, how are we going to manage these impacts when they're to come forward? And I'll be happy to send out an email to council in the next day or so as we try to get it ready for the 13th. And that's going on in parallel to what I think is another process which is going on by the province, which has set aside $150,000 for the whole of the Northwest, Terrace, Kitimat, and ourselves, and the regional districts, which we've made clear to them that probably is a bit of there's certainly not enough resources to do the kind of job that we think is going to be necessary, even for the baseline information. So that's kind of where we're at. It's a difficult environment because there's so much going on, particularly with the proponents and with the provincial and this kind of initiative at the I don't know, corporate level of the provincial government and the regulatory regime who is going to issue permits. So we're trying to focus on the regulatory regime right at the moment. I hope that helps. And I know it's confusing, but we are working and trying to figure out where we should put most of our limited energy, try and get the most bang for our resources.
If it would help, it may be beneficial to have Dale Richardson or Tavis McDonald come down here and give an overview of the objective of this. On this, you see its draft terms of reference. So this is just getting going, but they could explain succinctly what the provincial government is trying to do within the greater region, and the best way they think they can benefit the region as a whole. Yes.
I'm going to make that a motion, Your Worship.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that the City of Prince Rupert invite from the provincial government, Northwest Region Economic Development Department, Dale Richardson and or Tavis McDonald to come to the City of Prince Rupert to discuss the community level service impacts program that the province is working on for the Northwest region. Councillor Garon.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment that they come to see us every 3 months and just update us on any other information they know or that they can share with us or help us with. I just think there's so much going on and they probably know things we don't know, And it's just nice to hear from them because they are representing
Yeah, certainly that would be their choice.
our representation.
Is that okay with the mover and the seconder?
Maybe what we could do is ask them to come, and then when they're here, ask them to come. And the reason is I wouldn't want them to put it off. Say, oh, it's just a routine thing. I'd really like them to come this time with a specific invitation.
I'm okay with that. We can ask them when they come.
Sure, certainly. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Mandrick, with your magic there, did you get all that?
I believe so, Your Worship. I've got moved by Councillor Thorkelson, seconded by Councillor Ashley, that the City of Prince Rupert invite the provincial government. I've got to find out their exact name. Dale Richardson, Tavis McDonald, to come to the City of Prince Rupert to discuss the community level service programs.
That's program, and it's a program for the Northwest region.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions been called? Those in favor? Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
I have a second thing, and I wasn't, as I mentioned earlier, that I didn't know about the meeting on November 28th, and so I had no input, or I can say I had no input at the meeting, although I was asked over the telephone earlier regarding a meeting on December 17th. And for strategic planning, and I'm only available for 2 days in December, the 16th and the 17th, and only not available. Thank you. Only not available 2 days, 16th and the 17th.
I was actually wondering where you're going there.
Going with that, yeah. And I find this one of the most important things that we're going to do on council for the next year, and I really think that I should be able to attend that meeting. And I cannot. I have to be in Vancouver. It's been 2 meetings a month, every month, for 4 months by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and it's to discuss basically the privatization of the salmon industry. And this next one is to discuss the socioeconomic impacts and hiring somebody to do it, and to discuss the socioeconomic impacts of ITQs on communities. And I just have to be there. I mean, I just cannot not be there. So I cannot be here for the 17th, and I can't do it by telephone conference because it's going to be all day, and that's when I'm supposed to be in the meetings.
Yeah, I understand the date is actually the 16th.
Or the 16th, yeah. And, I'm doing the 16th.
Mr. Long has sent his apologies out, and you may choose individually to either accept or reject those. I won't offer any further comment on that. But is there a way you could participate by submitting information? I think one of the concerns is that we've had the same facilitator for a while, and we have to give him as much notice as possible. And I'm not sure what the arrangements are, but if we were to change, it would certainly be with a different facilitator. That's the only thing. Or Mr. Long, perhaps you could provide more background on the availability of the facilitator.
Well, as was explained, it's basically 1 day in December that he's available.
And if council wanted to change the date, when would we look at next? Would be January, February, March?
Well, that'll be up to council. This particular facilitator is not available until March, again after December. So I certainly could look and see if I can find a different facilitator.
Okay, well, we've heard the concern. What would the council like to do? Councillor Cunningham.
I would like to have a date when Joy can be here. I think it's very important the whole council's here, and especially senior councillors. I'm going to be going into that meeting hardly knowing anything about it, and we're going to need guidance especially from my point of view, by a senior councillor like Joy, Anna, or that, and I think it's very important that she's here for it.
Thank you. I don't think anybody disagrees. Councillor Ashley.
I mean, I think everybody sees both sides of the situation. I see the fact that we got a facilitator only available on that day, and I know that I raised this concern when we were talking about this, because I know that we specifically waited to have our strategic planning session until after Councillor Cunningham was elected, so that we would all be available. So I'm not sure what the solution is, but I do agree that I think it's important that all of council is there. But I'm not sure what the solution is in terms of a facilitator.
Right. It also ties in all the senior staff too.
Yeah. Is there some possibility, and I don't know, I'm just trying to throw out an idea that maybe, is there some possibility of doing a starting point maybe on one day, but then doing a subsequent one that doesn't have the facilitator so that everybody is a part of decision making? I don't know if that would solve it. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I'm just, but I do think that it's important that we're all there.
Further comments, Councillor Cunningham.
Why can't we have another facilitator? Are we stuck with just one? Or moderator, I should say. You know, like, I don't know the dynamics of this, but we seem to be stuck on this one person. Is there somebody else available?
I'm sure there's other people available, yes. It's just this person has done this job and is familiar with councillors and council and the city of Prince Rupert. But I can certainly look to find another one. I think at this stage I would have to try to organize it for January. I think it's too late now at this point to try and organize something for December. So we would probably look at the first week in January. I will see if I can find another facilitator. If that's what council wants to do.
Certainly, first or second week. I think it's important to have it earlier in the year than later. Councillor Giron.
So my concern is if we go with a different facilitator, will that facilitator need to do 2 days, or because Mr. McIntosh knows all the background of everything, it's just easier for him to come and do it for us. But I really don't want to wait till March for him, and I think time is of the essence. So
Mr. McIntosh doesn't have any dates available in the month of January.
So my question is, if we get a different facilitator, and do you anticipate it would be more than a one-day workshop?
No, I don't. I don't anticipate more than 1 day.
Yes?
I honestly cannot remember the name of the person, but there was one person, at least in 1 year, that we had, and I believe that it was coordinated through Councillor Gordon Payne at the time. He was a facilitator for Northern Health
Northern
or
Health
something,
Authority, yes.
and he did some strategic planning with us. I can't remember exactly what the nature was, but I think we could probably find out his name. I can't remember his name, though.
Yeah. Well, let's see if we can find somebody who's knows the municipal world. That might give us a bit of an advantage. I remember that particular fellow, though. Yes. So staff are waiting for direction on this. Yes, please go ahead.
I realize that this probably causes some concern with being able to change facilitators and a number of other things, and I apologize for that, but I do believe that we should have all of council at the strategic meeting. So I'm going to move that we cancel the 16th and we look for a date in early January. Obviously, it's going to depend on who we can find as a facilitator.
Right. So that's been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Discussion. Yes?
The only thing that I am thinking at right now is that I think that to avoid a situation where somebody else can't make it on a particular day, I think we need to make sure that we have, kind of clear our calendars, and or if there is a date that we can't make it, and we'll need to make sure that obviously
both Councillor Kinney and Carla
know about it, but we should make sure, and we need to be able to do that, I think, like in the next day or so, and we need to send that to staff.
Right. Councillor Giron, then Mr. Long.
I know Councillor Kinney's going away in January. I'm not sure what dates those are, so maybe he's not now. I'm not sure.
Mr. Long.
Yes, maybe I could propose a date now, January the 10th, which we've kind of set aside anyway for another matter, but I'm just thinking that way council could spend the day with their strategic planning and then do some other work and I think I might be able to tie a facilitator into that at the same time, which I hadn't thought of up until now, but now that you mention it, I might be. So if we could have a quick check at this point, see whether or not there's any problem with January 10th, then I've got only 2 more people that And rather than we go through this iteration in the next couple of days, does anybody have a trouble with January the 10th at the moment?
I think I have Pacific Salmon talks that week, but I will come home. That's the 10th. That's a Friday. Is that correct? I will come home a day early from that. No, that's not going to live and die whether I participate. I can assure you.
I'll let you know 5 minutes after the end of this meeting. Just check my calendar, which I don't have memorized. Any further reports, questions, and inquiries from members of council? Councillor Ashley.
Just a quick one, and we may not have heard anything, but I just was wondering if we had heard anything back from CN or if we've had a chance to send a letter to them about asking to meet with us.
I believe a letter was sent.
Yes, Your Worship, a letter was sent out and we haven't heard back.
Right. Okay. Councillor Cunningham.
Getting back to when the port was here, and Pinnacle and the port are going to be studying alternate plans for access to the waterfront. I don't know how we do this, but I would like to have either somebody from council or somebody from the community involved in those discussions and plans.
Well, we could send a letter requesting that a community representative have participation.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to do that?
Yes, I'd put that motion out there.
Certainly. So the motion would be to send a letter to the Prince Rupert Port Authority
and Pinnacle Appellate
that when they're considering waterfront access in the area of Pinnacle Pellet, that between CN Rail, Pinnacle Pellet, and the port, the city requests that a community representative be allowed to attend those meetings.
Yes.
So that's moved by yourself and seconded by Councillor Ashley. Discussion. Councillor Guerin.
My understanding, and I could be wrong, is that the port and Pinnacle might not just be looking at that area. They might be looking further north or east or whatever you want to call it, towards the Rushbrook area down that way. Like, I don't know if they're specifically looking at that one specific area. So I would kind of maybe just say waterfront access along the Prince Rupert waterfront. I wouldn't just say that area because they might not even be looking at that area.
Okay, so then in that case, the letter would be moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Ashley, that the City of Prince Rupert requests that when the Prince Rupert Port Authority is considering waterfront access for the public of Prince Rupert, that a community representative be allowed to attend those discussions. Is that fine? Okay, thank you. Mr. Mandrick, you got that? Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Guerin.
So my other question is, who would appoint that person to sit on that committee? Would that be a city appointment, or the port just pick somebody?
Well, the city's requesting, so hopefully they get back to us, and
we would appoint somebody.
We would suggest somebody, certainly. Yeah. It's our request to them. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Is there anything further from members of council? Okay, just quickly, I'll give the mayor's report. I participated in a regional committee on crime reduction involving northern communities with populations over 10,000 that are service centers. There are areas of awareness and concern in many communities regarding various types of crimes and safety. The topic of crime reduction will be reviewed by a panel of agency representatives, and Prince Rupert will have an opportunity to make a submission and participate further. And Inspector Wayne Mon of the RCMP Prince Rupert Detachment also participated. I participated in the North and Central Coast Ferry Advisory Committee meeting and subsequently met with other community stakeholders, all of whom will see their respective communities impacted by a rationalized ferry schedule, which was recently announced by the provincial government ministry responsible. I attended the Coastal Pathways Community Celebration at Northwest Community College and provided a greeting on behalf of City Council and residents. And that partnership between the school district and the Northwest Community College and industry, which was initiated by Ridley Terminals Incorporated, welcomed another industrial partner, which is Pacific Northwest LNG, who contributed $75,000 to the foundation training program for trades, men and women, specifically for electrical and the millwright trades. I attended the BG Group open house and listened to their presentation about liquefied natural gas. At that open house, they set up individual tables with a variety of expertise, and residents of Prince Rupert could sit down and talk about the transiting of liquefied natural gas by vessel, also how the gas is converted to a liquid, also how much CO2 is discharged into the atmosphere as the gas is converted to a liquid. There were other individuals on hand to discuss the socioeconomic impacts that this proposed liquefied natural gas export facility could bring to our area, and there were other persons there to discuss various other aspects of the project. Spectra Energy representatives were there to speak about the pipeline route, and there are considerations to bring the pipeline through the Nass Valley and out near King Coleth or at Nasuga Gulf. And I appreciate that the proponents of the Prince Rupert LNG project are reaching out to the residents of Prince Rupert with accurate, factual information and are there to answer questions and engage the community. And it was really a good gathering, and I hope the other LNG companies do something similar. I attended a forum on community-based fisheries management. There were two speakers, Mr. Arthur Bull, Fisheries Policy Representative with EcoTrust Canada, who talked about lessons learned from community-based fisheries management in other parts of Canada, and Mr. Des Nobles of the T. Buck Suzuki Environmental Foundation, who outlined a report that shows the intrinsic value of fisheries in West Coast communities. The report uses the year 2011 as an example and states that British Columbia seafood was served in approximately 2 billion meals in 74 countries. Within the region around Prince Rupert and in Prince Rupert, we currently have 3 groups looking at building liquefied natural gas export terminals. In the future, there may be more companies that pursue this in our area. These companies are interested in supporting the communities. Although all these LNG projects are under review presently, when there are commitments to the projects, the City Council may wish to request support for an industry that is important to all of our communities. And my thoughts on this are that that industry is our fishing industry. And as an example, if these companies wanted to co-sponsor a community salmon hatchery that would solely support ocean ranching, that could be a major benefit to the Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal communities. And perhaps the Council may wish to consider this at its strategic planning session, which now looks like it'll be in January. I participated in the British Columbia Coastal Fisheries Community Engagement Forum, along with community residents, including Dodge Cove and Port Edward residents, and rejected the proposed cutbacks by the province of British Columbia to the British Columbia ferry services which operate to and from Prince Rupert. A brief was read which outlined the negative impact the changes will have to the quality of life of residents, also to tourism and economic development in our area. Prince Rupert is a hub city for ferry services, as well as rail passengers using the ferry either going to Haida Gwaii or Southeast Alaska or to Port Hardy, and in some instances the smaller communities of Klemtu, Bella Bella, and Bella Coola. It does not make any sense, nor is it practical, to announce changes in December for implementation in April of the subsequent year, and then on top of that reduce the runs in the spring and the autumn, which will ruin the shoulder season for the tourism trade. At a time when Prince Rupert and the surrounding area is experiencing unprecedented growth with the development of export terminals, this is not the time to restrict access and egress to our city. There are more reasons than I've mentioned for not reducing service, and anyone who wishes to is welcome to a copy of the city's brief. Rural residents of British Columbia have watched while the provincial government has poured money into transit and the Sea to Sky Highway as examples, and while tolerant of that, there is a limit to what is acceptable. We're also aware that a liquefied natural gas consortium just paid the government of British Columbia $24 million for land in our region, approximately 20 miles from our city. It's ridiculous for us to see a time of unprecedented growth here and to see a group pay $24 million and then have the provincial government on very short notice decide to cut ferry service at Prince Rupert. With growth, you do not reduce access and egress. I believe we need to go straight to Premier Clark as soon as possible and ask for reconsideration. Mayor Dave McDonald has stated he will go to Victoria, and we should invite representatives of the communities that make up the Central and North Coast areas. With the Council's consent, we can have staff send the request for a meeting with Premier Clark, and we can invite the other representatives from those northern communities. Time is of the essence on this matter, and Councillor Thorkelson was also in attendance and participated. And I say that time is of the essence because with the European travel industry, the travel agents there, when they book a trip for somebody, it puts them in a liability situation. And of course, if there's any changes to any of this, and even if it takes, say, the provincial government to the month of March to come out with a final report, that doubt will actually curtail activities here. And I think it's important. And we've talked to representatives in Terrace, in Smithers, in Prince George, and even down as far as Williams Lake. But this whole issue of ferry service is bigger than just Prince Rupert in the north. We're a portal to these other communities. And in the case for Haida Gwaii, it concerns standard of living and the quality of life because, of course, that ferry is used to freight everything over there. Yes.
Just in relation to that, actually, at the last regional district meeting, we had a very similar discussion, and there was a motion made to contact other municipalities and regional districts that were impacted to do exactly that, to go and see Premier Clark. So I think that there would be support for that. I was also at the ferries meeting, but I had to leave.
Okay, I didn't see you there when we made
I was
the
there
submissions.
for the first hour.
It wasn't our show, but I didn't really like the way they had it. And for those of you that weren't there, if it's of interest to you, they set this up where you were invited at 5 o'clock and it was on from 5 until 8. But they had determined themselves, without letting the public know, that you would be there from 5 until 6:15, so they could show you all their wall boards about all the changes, and then they wanted to discuss the changes. Well, we're not about to discuss something that's going to have a major impact on us on very short notice. So we just rejected it out of hand. This is purely a political decision, and we want to talk to the Premier. And I think it's important. This has got a lot to do with our well-being. We've got a lot of people here who are involved in tourism. We've got a good product. We've got something to offer. We're willing to keep building that as part of our community. And to turn it around is disturbing. Councillor Garon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know when we were down at UBCM, we met with Minister Todd Stone, and we ended up staying with a meeting with him for an extra 10 or 15 minutes. I can't remember, but I really thought we had his ear, and we had, I think there was about 20 of us in the room with him. And obviously the Premier hasn't gotten that message. So, yeah, I really believe we need to move on this as soon as possible. And when the Premier asked us, what do you need to get ready for any of these large projects, I mean, that is a big part of our infrastructure that they're biting into, and it's just not acceptable.
Certainly. I was going to wait till the end of the report, but please go ahead.
So I would make a motion that we ask staff to write a letter requesting a meeting with Premier Clark regarding the BC Ferry situation. And we also forward that letter to the other local governments that would be affected so that they also could be in part of that meeting.
Certainly. And I know that some of the people that we've talked to in the other communities going towards Prince George are also part of the North by Northwest tourism. Of course, Tourism Prince Rupert was involved and made a presentation there. As I stated, the mayor of District of Port Edward made a presentation, and I believe that it's even got the interest of the BC and Yukon Hotels Association. It's interesting to note that 79% of the people that come here by train actually get on a ferry. And it's also interesting to note that when we had the tragedy where they lost the Queen of the North, they noticed it across Western Canada that hotels were getting cancellations in their reservations because bus tours would not be coming through. And they even noticed it at the gate receipts at the Bouchard Gardens. So it's far reaching. The last part of my report is oh, sorry. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garon, that we contact the Premier of the Province of British Columbia and immediately request a meeting for ourselves and other community representatives from the Central and North Coast. Questions been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Last part of the report. I attended the Montreal Massacre Vigil on December 6th, expressing awareness of the 14 young women who were murdered there in 1989. The vigil took place here in Prince Rupert and was hosted by the North Coast Transition Society. December 6th has been proclaimed the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women by the Canadian government. I've got one other suggestion here. I suggest to the Council, if members are interested, that we request a meeting with the Port Edward Harbour Authority to get an update on the condition and use of the small boat moorage in the city. They've been operating it for a number of years, and it was done that way so that we didn't have two harbour authorities, one for each community, to create some duplication. It was done some years ago. But also to hear about what's planned for the future, and the Council may wish to schedule a meeting in the new year and receive an overview of that part of our community that they manage. Okay. It's been moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garon, that the City of Prince Rupert, Councillor Thorkelson, that the City of Prince Rupert invite the Port Edward Harbour Authority to come and meet with Council to review the small craft harbors, moorage, and operations within the City of Prince Rupert, and to get an overview on what is currently happening and what is planned for the future. Yes.
And definitely their budget. I don't know if anybody else goes out to those floats at Port Ed, but I spend my whole summer on the Port Ed floats and the Rupert floats, and I can tell you which floats that I prefer to walk on. And it's not the Rupert ones. Port Ed Harbour Authority definitely has a slight leaning towards looking after its name. So I think we definitely need to do that. Our floats here are nothing like the ones out at Port Ed.
Councillor Cunningham.
I too spend a lot of time out in their floats and enjoy it compared to working on the floats in town here, and it might be brought to their attention that we would like to have a ramp you can drive down and unload on.
We'll save that for the meeting. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. The last item I have here, and this is a notice that people will see in the newspaper, and we're asking people if they're interested to submit no later than December 20th, 2013. And it reads, Volunteers Wanted. City of Prince Rupert is looking for volunteers interested in serving on the following boards and committees, and they are the Recreation Advisory Committee, the Performing Arts Center Society, and the Prince Rupert Airport Authority. And if you are interested in helping shape the future of our community, please submit a letter of interest no later than December 20th, 2013. And please include a written description of your skills and experiences that are relevant to the position that you are applying for. For more information on each of the particular committees, their work, their duties, meeting times, and other responsibilities, please refer to the website, which is www.princerupert.ca. Prince Rupert, all one word, lowercase, .ca, or contact the corporate administrator on the second floor of City Hall. And that phone number to contact the corporate administrator is 250-627-0934. Once again, 250-627-0934. And the very last item tonight is one which I believe I created myself, and that is I saw a communique about the airline, Air Canada Express or Air Canada Jazz, using the Q400 aircraft. And apparently, while they're implementing them into the system, they're using them here, I believe, sporadically. And we had an incident there where they got behind because of their loads, and they got backlogged, I believe, with baggage and air freight. So they put a Q400 on, which carries 74 passengers rather than 50, to clear the backlog. And rather than sit for 2 hours on an aircraft, people were only on there for an hour and 20 minutes. And that plane is actually, not only is it larger, as I've mentioned, but it's faster and quieter. So hopefully at some point in the future here, a couple of these projects get going, we'll see larger aircraft. That concludes my report. Councillor Ashley.
There was just one thing, and I had forgotten about it. We're scheduled to have a picture tomorrow at 4:30, but I'm wondering if we need to reschedule, because will Councillor Kenny be able to?
I think we'll have to reschedule. I understand he broke a couple of ribs, but I believe Councillor Garon talked to him. He's convalescing. Pretty painful when you just broke a couple of ribs, and the doctor will tell you to go home and lay on the couch, a couple of pillows under your shoulders, and not to move unless you need to use the washroom, so that your ribs will knit together.
I think we should just phone him in the morning.
Sure. I'm just.
How are we going to communicate to everybody?
Well, that's Mr. Long's job, I think. How does council feel? Do you want to cancel it or try and do it? I don't think Councillor Kenny will be moving too much, but I shouldn't speak for him.
I think we should just leave it. I don't think it's unfair for us to ask Councillor Kenny to come when you're not feeling like that. I mean, he probably would come, but I think that we shouldn't ask him to. I think we should cancel it for another time.
Yes. Okay. Councillor Ashley.
Since we've made our first meeting, I think, is January 6th. I'm wondering if we could maybe just reschedule and just have it at 4:30 just before we have the meeting or whatever on that day.
Sure.
Okay. Maybe on the 10th.
Why don't we leave it to January and pick a date?
January 10th.
It's been moved that we adjourn. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Garon. Discussion? Question has been called. Those in favor. Thank you. This meeting stands adjourned.